What is happening out there, rotoscouts baseball fans? What's going on, gang? Happy Tuesday to everybody. 4 o'clock start, 4:01 start anyway. Close enough. Trying to get going a little bit early today. Had to scramble a lot yesterday to get lineups in after we punched out at, 6:15, 6:20, something like that on yesterday's show. We've got basically the exact same slate to talk about today. It's funny. Usually I go through, I wipe out all the games in the schedule, where all the different the team runs and all that stuff go. And I started to do that today, and I said, wait, it's 12 games again. Let me make sure that it's not the exact same list of games. And lo and behold, for the first time that I can remember, there wasn't even one day game that swapped into the night slate. So it was the exact same 12 games. Different pitching slate for sure. I think we've got a really interesting pitching board again, but I think it's a little bit more limited than last night's in some ways. There's a lot of good names on it. There's a lot of decent names in tough spots. There's a ton of value options on the board, but it's a little bit thinner at the top. It's a little bit more limited, I think, overall, and there's definitely some very, very targetable spots. So we'll get into that. We'll talk through the entire slate game by game. We'll talk about the ridiculous spot for the Braves. Hopefully they've improved some security at Coors Field, so nobody's going to run out and tackle poor Ronnie Acuna Jr. tonight. But it's going to be a good one. That was a crazy spot yesterday. Ronnie Acuna comes back at 7,000 after going in DK after going 4 for 5, putting up in FanDuel, scoring like a 60-point night, dominating the slate naturally. We had that crazy breakout. I told you guys how many times did I say that Kyle Harrison's trying to break out of the top of the box, and that's still. I wish I had never read that article where they were quoting Kapler saying that he was, probably on some kind of a pitch count. Like, if we didn't have that in the way, he would have had a slate leading or close enough to it projection on the board to talk about yesterday. Hopefully you guys used him a little bit. I did. I had him in a fair amount of lineups. Not a crazy amount because I put my thumb on it a little bit. If I had left it alone, I probably would have had a decent shot at winning the slate. Had a bunch of chasers through the night last night. A lot of lineups jumping up into the top 10 and then rotating out. I think my top finish was in 13th place. Ended up breaking even for the night. It was an okay night, but feels like it could have been a better one had I not seen that potential pitch count but that was straight from the manager's mouth. That was a tough one to deal with. But we had a lot of interesting spots yesterday, so it was really, really fun. Yeah, Steve, that Acuna price was out before the slate was over last night. It's difficult to justify raising it a little bit even more than that. But it'll be interesting to see, what he's at tomorrow and potentially what he does tonight. Larry C says, can we call out the elephant in the room? You didn't say Altuve was going to hit the cycle. Did he hit the cycle last night? I missed that. I didn't catch that he went for the cycle. I did love that Astros spot yesterday. We liked the Astros. What else did we like yesterday? We liked the Twins. We were all over that slate yesterday. I know. Looked like Meach had another good one. Posted a decent winner, not a huge one, but keep the lights on, keep the bills paid, kind of a winner. I know there were a couple other screenshots in the Discord, so good night across the board. It looked like last night. Hopefully, some of you guys cashed in. Let's say hi to everybody. I know we've got a good group here already. 19 folks hanging out. A couple minutes into the show with an early start, not bad. Po DGen Stoner's here. He says 357 followers on the road to 420 followers before NFL opening season. I like that. Let's get there. I think that's within reach. We're on our way, growing steadily. We're adding Twitter followers. Make sure you hit the like button, the subscribe button if you're not already one of those 357 subscribers. If you're not one of the 190 whatever people following the @rotoscouts handle on Twitter/X, go ahead and do that too. That one helps as well. Help retweet, like those things as they come out. Helps get the articles in front of more people, the show times in front of more people. So I appreciate when you guys do that. And always, it's that little dopamine hit. You open something up and you see a like on it. It's just, ooh. Just like checking your scores on FanDuel or on DraftKings. Joker's here. He's hanging out like right over here. That's where my left arm is right now. My pinky finger is inside of his ear, scratching the inside of his ear right now. It's fun. Matt Tomlinson's here. Calvin's here. Larry C, we already said hi to Lar. D's here. What's up, D? Ken Woodhouse. What's up, Ken? Ken says T McB, so I'll go K Wooho. That was clunky. B Funk is here. What's up, B Flunk? B Funk? Not Flunk. Funk. Stephen Leibowitz. Yeah, we got everybody. With a little shout out for everybody who's here. Let's dive into this thing. Started early, so we might as not use our time wisely. Not soak up all the extra time just chatting about nothing. So like I said, kind of an interesting board. I imagine that at least the top two are pretty similar around the industry. I don't see any reason that anybody would have Pablo Lopez or George Kirby projected anywhere but the top two spots on this board. But then I think we get interesting. I expect that Cobb's going to be pretty popular, even if he's not as projected high as if he's not projected quite as highly as my model's giving him. I expect that around the industry he's gaining a lot of attention given the ridiculous performance that Kyle Harrison just put up against this team. That kid's a lefty. Cobb's a righty. Cobb's a lower end strikeout pitcher. But Cobb's a very, very good, talented, established veteran who's very good at checking power, who could have a very, very strong game against that team. And they're without Joey Votto, without Matt McClain in that lineup. So very strong spot for Cobb. Kershaw against the Diamondbacks. My hope is Ty Cobb is on the slate. Yeah, Ty Cobb. Why not? Did I say Ty Cobb? I hope I did. I meant Alex Cobb. If I said Ty Cobb, that's fantastic. Might have been my favorite show moment all season if I actually just said Ty Cobb. Don't play Ty Cobb unless he's available at the plate. If it's an Ohtani situation, you can't get him at the plate. I don't expect much from Ty Cobb as a pitcher on this one. Wouldn't expect much from Ty Cobb, who died conservatively like 50 years ago. Probably wouldn't expect much from him at the plate either. I didn't? Oh well. I'll keep it in mind to screw something up later. Clay Kershaw, limited. My hope here is that maybe he goes a little under-owned for the price, for the opponent, for the perceptions of a deep pitching slate, and maybe people check the game log and see, oh wow, only 2 innings the last time out. That was a postponement for rain reasons. He had only gone 5 innings each of the 2 starts back from injury, so I do think there might be a 6-ish inning cap on Kershaw here, but I think he projects out well enough. He's Clay Kershaw. If I'm getting him for 5, I'm good. If I'm getting him for 6, so much the better. The point is, I hope that he maybe goes a little bit underappreciated by the public for his talent. Gav Williams, I really like that spot. 32-point FanDuel projection, 8,300, 8,600. Premium rookie talent. Very high-end young starter going up against all the strikeouts in that Twins lineup on the other side of that Pablo Lopez game. That one is going to be really interesting. I think that one turns into a pitching duel. Should be one to watch. Jose Berrios against the Nationals. Interesting spot. We just saw Kevin Gausman not really deliver in that situation, but he also is a lower end pitcher than Gausman. And that's kind of the thing that I was referring to when I was saying, it's a little bit of a worse pitching slate. We get a lot of these spots where it was like, all right, a top guy yesterday. Now we're into a slightly diminished option going up against the same team. Not that gives me any love for the Nationals. Not that I'm not going to play Jose Berrios because he projects out pretty well. I just object to the 10-1 price tag on him on FanDuel. 8,800 is a much more comfy price for Jose Berrios on this slate. Andrew Heaney projects pretty well, but it's Dr. Andrew and Mr. Heaney. So depending on which one we get, we're also seeing monster power projections for the Mets across a few of those guys. Pete Alonso's the overall home run pick for the day because we all know about Heaney's home run problems. But on the right day, Heaney could win this slate against the Mets for 7,500, 7,200. Justin Steele's a strong option. 10-6, 9-5. You're paying full freight, but he's a good option. Cole Ragans is everybody's darling on this slate. 6,600, 6,000. Projects out really well against the Pirates here. I totally get it. He's pitching very, very well. I think it is a situation where I might grab a couple of Pirates hedge stacks. Not that they've been good against lefties overall, but I just think that maybe everybody's getting a little bit ahead of themselves, a little bit out over their skis on the Cole Ragans play. So I do like him. I will have him. I'll have plenty of him on FanDuel for 66. I think he's a phenomenal value play for 6,000 on DK. I'm not taking him off the board by any means, but it probably pays, especially if you're going to be popular, to play some Pittsburgh on the other side. I didn't mean to get that alliterative about that. Corbin Burns against the Cubbies. Maybe a situation where it's a limiting impact for Burns against the Cubbies and Steele against the Brewers. I like the spot for Steele a little bit better. Cubs lineup is better than the Brewers lineup. Burns is struggling where Steele is basically excelling, but Corbin Burns does have one of the higher overall ceilings on this entire slate. If he comes out as the 30+% strikeout version of Burns, pitches 7 or 8 innings like we've seen him do a few times this season, the throwback version of Corbin Burns could also win this slate tonight. Charlie Morton's difficult at Colorado. Dean Kramer, probably a little bit of value at 88.77. Projects out fairly well against that weak White Sox lineup. Mackenzie Gore, difficult spot against the Blue Jays. Quintana, I don't really buy into. Zach Thompson is kind of interesting because he only costs 59.56, and I'm expecting basically a full start here. Even Brandon Williamson, Seth Lugo, there's some interesting options. It's a fairly deep pitching slate, but I think the peak is lower than yesterday. That's probably the better way to put it. Larry says it's the way to Steven says, anyone else kind of fond of Cole Ragans besides my own shame? Yeah, Steven, I think everybody in the world is going to be on Cole Ragans. I expect that's going to be pretty popular. If I'm wrong about that, somebody correct me with some other places ownership numbers on him, because that would make him more interesting to me. But I expect him to be pretty popular. Steven says, by the way, like the Braves spot isn't good enough. The Rockies bullpen is tapped out after the past few days. Yeah, I mean, the Braves were coming in with, earlier in the day, it's probably only gone up since then, but earlier in the day it was a 7.46 run implied total. Just kind of breaks the conditional formatting for everybody else. Like everything else looks green, light green and yellow as by comparison here. You do have, 1, 2, 3 other spots that are above a 5. Yesterday we had more 5+ to work with too. Interesting slate, the way it breaks down. So there's deep pitching. It could go any number of directions if the top end options fail. We've got some lower ranked expensive guys who were major ceiling plays like Burns, so should be an interesting one. Steven says Gore has been talked up too much this season. He's mostly sucked. Yeah, he had a great start to the year. And then has really, really declined over each month of the season. He's gotten worse and worse as things have gone on. I do think he's got talent. I think he's going to, have a pretty decent career going forward. But yeah, it's a limited option. He's just kind of in the middle of the board there. So let's get the game by game started here. Jesse Scholten's 5,200, 6,100. Don't think we need to spend too much time on him. 4.15 ERA, a 5.05 xFIP. Sub 17% strikeout rate. I don't really see much on the board here for Mr. Scholten's. And we do have the Orioles coming in at a 5.49 implied total, which was one of the slate leading marks that we just looked at. Home team kind of sucks not getting them on the road. You get the extra plate appearances most likely if they do go off, and if they are winning after 8 innings, obviously you get limited by that. But I think there's tons and tons of potential here, and I want to get to some pretty decent number of Orioles stacks, because I kind of like the value marks. Some of these guys on the FanDuel slate they're not cheap, but they're affordable. These 34s, 33s, 32s, that's affordable enough. It's not ideal to get to help you unlock the Braves or whatever, but it's a fair mid-range play for a lot of really good bats. Ryan Mountcastle, tons of right-handed power. Anthony Santander, pretty good switch hitting power, 9.60 in the home run model to lead the team. 25 home runs on the season leads the team. Gunnar Henderson right on his heels with 22 homers, a 228 ISO. Phenomenal rookie season for Gunnar Henderson. He's up to a 26.4% strikeout rate, down to a 9.9% walk rate, but he's hitting the ball really well now and has been for the better part of the last 2 months. Major surge for him, up to a 53.8% hard hit rate. He's a terrific option. 5,400, 3,400, good mid price, shortstop and third base on both sites. Adley Rutschman, your top catcher on most slates. Gains plate appearances by leading off, 273, 365, 421 triple slash, 16 home runs, a 119 WRC plus. He's been terrific. All 4 of these guys are excellent. And then these 2 guys are very, very good bolt-ons, mixers, whatever you want to call them, before it gets to Cedric Mullins, who really belongs up here with these guys. They just only have so many spots to go around at the top of the lineup. 4,900, 3,300 from Mullins. He's been a 30-30 player in the past. 12 homers, 15 steals, and only 351 plate appearances this year. He's a terrific option for pretty cheap prices. Definitely cheap for him at these price points. Hayes, up and down kind of a season, but quality overall, 279, 328, 455, creating runs 14% better than average. O'Hearn hitting above his head, or he's turned into a completely different player over these 268 plate appearances. He's been very good. They haven't raised the price. He's still in the middle of the lineup. Solid lefty bat there. Like getting to that option. Ramon Urias, Adam Frazier, playable parts down the bottom of the lineup. Odd output of power for Frazier, and kind of a lack of power for Urias compared to where we, not where we expect him to be necessarily, but he hit 16 home runs and 445 plate appearances last year. That's the guy I'm looking for if I roster Urias at the bottom of the lineup. On the White Sox side of things, they're facing Dean Kramer, who does project out fairly well in terms of that mid-level, price-wise, value kind of a guy. Not an extreme price discount, but a fair value, a mid-range kind of a pitcher, and he's put up mid-range kind of performance this year. 21.3% strikeouts over 144 innings, 26 starts, giving up a little bit too much on the premium contact, 9.5% barrels, 90 plus miles an hour of exit velo, and a 4.12% home run rate. That doesn't play particularly well against this guy. and kind of against this guy, but everybody else in the lineup, I'm not really that worried about here. I think Kramer's got enough talent to pitch his way through this lineup a couple of times. Maybe he finds a few strikeouts along the way. They've got a 24.4% strikeout rate as a unit for that confirmed lineup. So at least a somewhat secure floor probably for the money and a decent ceiling. Not a crazy high, Corbin Burns or, Pablo Lopez ace caliber kind of a ceiling, but an okay enough ceiling here for the money. So I don't think Kramer's off the board. I think he's a decent enough value play from the mid-range. And I don't really like the White Sox stack all that much. They're carrying a 3.63 run total. Major underdogs in this situation. Tim Anderson, Andrew Benintendi have both been really bad all season. 95 WRC plus and a .097 ISO for Benintendi, and he's been a lot better than Tim Anderson at the top of the lineup. 1 home run, 12 stolen bases at .287 on base percentage. Not Tim Anderson type numbers. Luis Robert, excellent option. 14.8% barrels, 41.4% hard hits, 34 homers, .289 ISO, 134 WRC plus. He's their team leader. He's a superstar. Best player on the team by a wide margin. Eloy Jimenez, 4,200. Nice discount for his power bat. Anytime he's in the lineup, if he's healthy, he's very, very playable. 9.9% barrels, 48% hard hits, 15 homers in only 375 plate appearances. Playable enough. Joel Moncada was good 2 years ago. Hasn't really been good since, but he's cheap, easy to get to at third base. Correlates with these guys, correlates with Andrew Vaughn behind him. Vaughn's the third best power bat on the team. He's the third guy over the waterline for run creation on the year. 134 for Lubov, 107 for Eloy Jimenez. And then Vaughn down at 101, only a 167 ISO, 16 home runs in 498 plate appearances. It's an okay season. He's good, not great. 2,800 is cheap, 3,500 is cheap. Puts bat on ball better than he delivers in terms of the ISO, the home run total. Oscar Colas has done nothing in his 225 plate appearances, only 3 home runs. We do project him for power in the overall sense, but looks like it's not arriving this year. Lenyn Sosa, kind of a mix-in option, and then Corey Lee does have a little bit of pop in the bat for 2,400, 2,100, but it's not a great spot. I greatly prefer the Dean Kramer side of things. So Orioles bats way up top. Dean Kramer is a mid-range value type. The FanDuel price is a little bit awkward to call a value at 8,800. That's why I'm stumbling over that. That's kind of, it's fair, but it's not really a value price. So you're just kind of getting Dean Kramer where he should be. I think the 7,700 as an SP2 on DK is a fair value. So Orioles bats, Kramer. No interest in Jesse Schulten's, only minor hedge positions of White Sox. You can one-off Lubov in there. You can build like a small 3-man through the heart of the lineup, but that's about it. Don't see a lot for the White Sox today. Nats bats. Nats lineup is not in. Blue Jays lineup is in. We've got that one. Trey says, today feels like that Spider-Man meme. I'm looking at labs right now, and it feels exactly like a clone of yesterday with the same games and different pitching. That is exactly how I feel about it, buddy. Very much the same day. D's here, Dimitri. Dimitri says, happy Cole Ragans Day, gang. Let's get one tonight. Yeah, I shouted you out at the beginning of the show, but congrats again on a decent little pop last night. As I said, not a bank breaker. Not one that you're going to retire on, but definitely nice to book those and keep things rolling. Looks like the Pirates made a change. Colin Selby starting. I'm imagining that's just an opener. Not that it really matters. We'll get to that game in a sec. Just remind me when we get there. So the Blue Jays, Jose Barrios, 8,800, 10-1. Very different option from site to site. In the value pool, given his talent, given his ceiling, his upside, the past performance, it definitely at 88 puts him in the value pool. Obviously a little higher up in the value pool than a guy like Dean Kramer at 77, but a more talented option than Dean Kramer at 77. A similar matchup against the Nationals. The Nationals are a low strikeout group. That's the one thing they do well. We saw it against Gausman yesterday. They don't necessarily all draw walks very well, but he walked a couple, gave up some base hits. Just balls in play can burn you against this team. 17.2% strikeout rate is fantastic for this projected lineup. That has the benefit of a 12.5% strikeout rate for Jacob Young over 8 plate appearances. So you can discount that. Maybe it goes up a little bit, but like Ildemaro Vargas at 5.7% over 211. Keibert Ruiz is excellent over 449 with his moderate catcher power or mid-range catcher power. 9.8% strikeouts is fantastic. 19% for Meneses, 19.7 for CJ Abrams. They're a difficult group to strike out, so you don't get a ton of additional points from that. if they start putting balls in play against Barrios, or if the walks creep up on him, he could get in trouble. We've seen Barrios be up and down throughout his career, but overall this year, he's harnessed the power issues that were plaguing him last year. 3.01% home run rate is a nice improvement on only 36.1% hard hits, 88.1 miles an hour of exit velo. A 3.55 ERA is good. A 4.19 xFIP is fine. It's not great. It's higher than the ERA, but it's fine. 7% walk rate, 22.8% strikeouts. He's in a slightly above average pitcher overall, with a ceiling for a bit more than your average guy, I think is the right way to couch Jose Barrios here. So the FanDuel price at 10-1 makes it a little bit of an uncomfortable fit. He's really expensive over there. I have to imagine he's not going to be crazy popular on the FanDuel slate. Probably more so on the DK board for 88. That's a relatively good option over there. So I do think that there's more likelihood of popularity on the Brewers play on DraftKings. I'll have him in the pool on FanDuel. He'll certainly be a part of my builds. I'll try and get to him. I might have to specifically go out of my way to get to him. He projects fine. It's not that he's under projected for the 10-1. It's just there's a lot of cheaper options that take up a lot of those shares. When I'm going to do my sort later, that's what's going to happen. I'm pretty sure. So he's on the board. It's a good spot, good opportunity against the Nationals, but maybe a reduced strikeout opportunity compared to a normal start for him. And he's only a upper middle kind of a tier of a starter overall. Mackenzie Gore, 7,400, 8,100. Tough matchup against the Blue Jays. As we were just referring to, he's been declining throughout the season. Started out with a 30-plus strikeout rate over the first 2 months. Has cratered down to 26.8 at this point. 9.8% walks, 4.38 ERA. Almost at the 4 xFIP. The xFIP is still 3.95. That's pretty good underneath the 4.38 ERA. But the walks are way too high. The whip is way too high at 1.37. The home runs and the premium contact are the real issue. 12% barrels, 44.3% hard hits, 89.9 miles an hour of exit velo, and a 4.24% home run rate. That gets problematic when you're talking about a hard-hitting Blue Jays team on the other side. Saw some success with Toronto for a little bit of pop yesterday. 17th home run out of George Springer. If we're really looking at the Springer numbers, I know it's not George Springer quality, but given that he costs $4,800, $3,000, 258, 327, 407 with a 103 WRC plus, 17 homers, 19 steals. For that kind of pricing, with a 17.9% strikeout rate, so he's always putting the ball in play, that's not all bad. I'm happy to go to that. I mean, he costs on DK, he costs 100 more than Joey Meneses on the other side. Meneses has 11 homers, no stolen bases, a 104 WRC plus, so he's 1% better than average grading, or 1% more, 1% ahead of Springer for run creation average. I don't know, however you say that. Better batting average on the season, but similar on base, a little bit higher slugging percentage, but like, I would much rather get to George Springer at the top of this Blue Jays lineup against Mackenzie Gore than to get to Joey Meneses against Jose Barrios in that Nationals lineup, is my overarching point here. Meneses at 2,700 on FanDuel, 300 less. Same kind of a situation. I just think Springer's the better overall player. Davis Schneider, 6.88 in today's home run model, had a massive total yesterday. Was a pretty popular play for cheap pricing. 4,300 second base and outfield on DK, 2,800 on FanDuel. A lot of value for that FanDuel price. He was coming up a lot from me yesterday. I think he will again today. 29.2% strikeouts over the 48 plate appearances, but does have 5 home runs in the tiny sample. Vladdy, 20 home runs on the season, a 173 ISO, 116 WRC plus, 5,200, 3,300. Perfectly happy paying those prices for Vladdy Guerrero. No Brandon Belt in the lineup today against the lefty. It's an entirely right-handed lineup until you get to Kevin Kiermaier hiding at the bottom. We've got Danny Jansen in the heart of the lineup. He's got 16 homers in 293 plate appearances, a 241 ISO. Pretty strong bat with catcher eligibility. $3,500 catcher on DK. Hitting cleanup, that's pretty valuable over on the DK slate. I kind of like that. I like the home run potential for Danny Jansen. Not bad. 10.5% barrel, 6.79 in the home run model here against Gore with all that premium contact. Whit Merrifield, playable part from the heart of the lineup. Good correlation option. Decent individual contributions with 11 homers, 23 steals. Above average for run creation. Alejandro Kirk, Ernie Clement, Santiago Espinal, Kevin Kiermaier. Kind of falls off. Kirk is a playable catcher as a secondary catcher, but I prefer Jansen if I'm building on DK. 6 homers in 323 plate appearances for Kirk, 11% worse than average grading runs. So it's a mixed option down there. And then Clement, Espinal, Kiermaier, just kind of swappable parts at the bottom of the lineup. Kiermaier has been 4% better than average, creating runs over 322. He's primarily here for defense, but an okay offensive season for him. So if we're ranking this one, Jose Berrios, Blue Jays bats, Mackenzie Gore value, very limited shares of Nationals, if any. I know I said that yesterday. It's not like they went off against Gausman. They just put a few runs on him. I think that's the worst we get against Berrios again. Like, they put a few runs on him, ruin his day, like they did to Gausman last night. He puts up a 25 on FanDuel scoring or whatever. And the Nats don't really go off like crazy. The number of times they really roll Jose Berrios for a huge score on a slate like this, where it's competitive with Rockies and so on, is kind of limited. Let's keep on rolling. Get to this next game here. Astros, Red Sox. I think we're expecting some fireworks in this one again. Let me grab the Astros lineup. It's in. Michael Brantley back in the lineup for the Astros. Another benefit to that Astros lineup. As if they weren't good enough already. Red Sox are in. All right, so pitching-wise, I don't think I want to get to either one of these options. They're both relatively talented guys. 19.5% strikeouts for Brian Bayo, a 3.56 ERA, a 4.05 xFIP with a 6.4 walk rate. He's better than JP France has been. France 17.8% walks, a 3.51 ERA, a 4.57 xFIP, allowing 3% home runs to Bayo's 3.18%. But I believe in Bayo's ability, just based on what he does on the mound, a little bit more effectively, which is limiting launch angles, limiting barrels. I believe in his knack for limiting home runs a little bit more than I believe in what France has done. They've both given up a little bit of power this season, not spectacular at limiting home runs, but not aggressively bad in the other direction. They're both kind of middling options. They don't project very well because there's so much offense on the board in Vegas in this one. This game has a 10.5 run total. Outside of the 12 that's being pulled by the Braves, mostly just on the Braves side in Coors Field, that's easily the highest run total on the board. It's a run and a half higher than that Orioles game. So both of these teams I'm expecting to deliver some offense again today. And I don't really get drawn to the pitchers. 9-2 for JP France is just too expensive, even against a worse team in a pitcher's park. I don't know that I would want to pay 9-2 for JP France. That's just aggressively high. I don't really understand why he's priced that high. 8-2 on DK against a different team, different situation. Maybe he's on the board at that price on DK, but it's not an aggressively good option. And the same thing's true about Bayo. I just don't want to pay $9,000 for Brian Bayo at Fenway Park against this Astros team. At worst, I think they're going to score a few runs and ruin the DFS day at those prices. There's so many better value options that project better, that are in better situations just from the eyeball test. They're in better situations. You don't need to know that much to be able to spot that. So I don't love either of these pitching options. Either one of them could succeed to like the middle of the board, but I don't see either one of them being a slate winner today. Not at these numbers. Not at these prices. Joker agrees. He's here. Astros side of things, I want to get to some Astros stacks for sure. Jose Abreu hit his 11th home run of the season last night. He's up to a 77 WRC plus. Monster performance. As we talked about, he's basically been flat since last August. Was at one time a pretty fearsome right-handed power hitter. A little of that has come back over the last couple of months. He's pulled his season together. It's not good. It's not respectable, but at least it's better than like the zeros it was looking like he was going to put up for a while there. Altuve at the top of the lineup is a star at second base, 6,200, 4,000, 10 home runs, 13 steals, a 163 WRC plus in his 282 opportunities. Just pay for him if you can afford him. He's a very, very good second baseman. It's basically impossible to get Braves and Astros again on this one. That's a dynamite combination, but it's very, very difficult given how high priced they are. I think you can get there if you embrace some of the bottom of the lineup options, obviously, on both teams. But just, when you put lineups together, it's important to not just look at the names, but also look at who's in the lineup from those teams. Obviously, some of these guys can succeed, but you start going to lower end on both sides. You end up with lineups that are 6, 7, 8 hitters on both teams in both your stacks, and then you're like, kind of limiting my upside. Bregman, 5,600, 3,500, 21 homers on the season, a 125 WRC plus, fantastic low strikeout rate at 13.2, excellent walk rate at 12.8, tons of walks at the top of the lineup here for the Astros. They're terrific. Really, really high-end team. Alvarez and Tucker, I expect both of them to be pretty popular on this slate, the monster lefty power hitters, but I don't think anybody else in the lineup is going to creep up to like crazy popularity. So you can dance around that popularity. You just roster them. You offset it by going to the full stack. You can offset it in other directions, and it's not going to be crushingly popular. They'll just be more popular than their teammates. Maybe they get into the double digits on both sites, but they're totally worth it. 22 homers for Alvarez on the season and only 368 plate appearances. He's their best hitter, their best power hitter, their best player. Kyle Tucker pushing him for that title of best overall player on this team, though. 26 homers, 26 stolen bases, a 143 WRC plus, 554 plate appearances. Obviously took him longer to get to the 26 home runs, but a very good left-handed hitter. Abreu I talked about briefly. Michael Brantley, as I referred to, making his season debut back in the lineup, 3,700, 2,500. This is a great price for Brantley on the FanDuel slate. This is actually a pretty damn good price for him on the DK slate as well, 3,700. Last year, 7 plate appearances we don't need to talk about. 2 years ago, 508 plate appearances, 311, 362, 437, a 123 WRC plus, hit 8 home runs. Pretty good correlated scoring option, gets himself on base. Has a little bit of speed, didn't really show it that year. Has a little bit of pop, didn't really show it that year. I don't know what to expect from Michael Brantley in this situation, given that he's made 7 plate appearances in the last 2 seasons. But there's got to be some potential there for those low prices. If you're going Astros, I think he's got to be a part of the plans. I don't think you skip him for those low prices. Jainer Diaz, nice breakout season, 19 home runs, a 249 ISO, and 319 plate appearances. Excellent contact profile for a still cheap player with catcher eligibility where you need it. Mauricio Dubon, kind of limited, but does play 3 positions for 2,500 on FanDuel, 275, 305, 393. If he puts the ball in play a couple times, we're in business for those prices in the positional flex. Outfield only on DK for 31, limited option. Jeremy Pena, limited shortstop, 4,000, 2,700, 10 homers, 11 steals, 96 WRC plus. Not as good as his reputation was coming into the season, and is kind of not really improved on being worse than his reputation. Yeah, I don't know what I was trying to... Not really delivering Jeremy Pena up to expectations, let's say that. 4.4% barrels, kind of a weak season at the bottom of the lineup. The Red Sox lineup, all these lefties, really like the opportunity for the Red Sox, showing a little bit of power through the heart of the lineup against JP France. Like I referred to, I believe in Bayo's ability to check these guys' power more than I believe in France's ability to check these guys' power. Alex Verdugo off the top, 4,500, 3,300. Great pricing for a correlated scoring option that ties directly into Rafi Devers. 57.38. He's up to around where he should be priced, maybe a little couple $100 too cheap still. 29 homers, a 242 ISO, leads the team with a 12.68 in the home run model. Adam Duvall second on the team with a 9.39 in the home run model. You've got a couple of guys here all lurking around the magic number for power. A lot of power showing through for the Red Sox. Trevor Story at 7.77 in the home run model. He's got 1 on the board, only a 206, 250, 324, 51% worse than average, creating runs over his 72 plate appearances. I just don't care. This is what I want to see. The premium contact is there. 14.3% barrels, 50% hard hits. Take the discount. Shortstop only on DK, 4,600. Second base and shortstop for 3,000 on FanDuel. That's an excellent option. Tristan Casas, 4,400, too cheap. 2,900, too cheap. 21 homers, a 227 ISO, 7.86 in the home run model. It's cooled a little bit from his strong second half surge, but 13.9% barrels, 46.4% hard hits. Still gets himself on base at a very good clip. So I like the option for Casas in the heart of the lineup there. Talked about Duvall, the 9.39 in the home run model, but he's got to focus on it real quick. A 582 slug, a 310 ISO, 17 home runs and only 266 plate appearances. People forget how good a power hitter Adam Duvall is. 4,800 is not enough. 3,000 is not enough. Masataka Yoshida, 4,700, 3,100, also not quite highly priced enough. Excellent lefty bat, 298, 352, 460. Good play for correlated scoring. Able to hit a home run when he needs to. 8 stolen bases, 13 long balls on the season, 41.4% hard hits, 18% better than average for run creation. Turner's been excellent all season. Just another just ticking Justin Turner's excellent career at the plate. 290, 361, 495, a 204 ISO, creating runs 29% better than average, 22 homers. He's just fantastic. 16.4% strikeout rate. Look at all these low strikeout rates to inhibit JP France's ability to succeed. Bats on both sides. Bottom of the Red Sox lineup, Reese McGuire, David Hamilton, mix and match options. Red Sox bats, Astros bats. Neither pitcher. Really like the opportunity for both of those teams. Priorities. See what's going on in chat. Larry C says 78 watching. Hit the like for Terry. People, I appreciate that. Larry, looks like we're up to 84 hanging out with us right now. Appreciate everybody joining us. I know we've got the regulars who participate in chat, but that suggests to me there's a lot of people who just hang out, listen in, try and pick up some of the good plays, and I really appreciate all you guys too. I know it, you don't get the specific shout outs because I don't know your names and I don't know when you're here, but I really appreciate you showing up, and I appreciate when you hit the like button for me. Steven, that's a great point. Is Rafaela in the lineup? Because he's not in the confirm that's up on Labs. I was expecting him. I had him in the article. I'm very surprised that he's not in the lineup. I forgot to mention it as I was going down the lineup. I noticed it when I put it in and then I forgot. But yeah, that's a good call out. Ceddanne Rafaela, the premium high-end prospect for the Red Sox, who they just called up and we were expecting to make his debut in this spot, does not appear to be in the lineup. If that changes, he's very much in play. He's got, in 485 plate appearances in Double and Triple A this year, 20 home runs, 36 stolen bases. Premium prospect for the Red Sox. They're excited about that bat. If he is in the lineup, if he sneaks in there, definitely include him in your plans for the Red Sox. Don't play him if he's not starting. Seems kind of obvious, but sometimes you got to throw these things in. Jose Quintana, 6,300, 7,700, 25-point FanDuel projection puts him a little bit in play. We just saw this Rangers team get shut down by Tyler McGill last night over 6 innings, and then the Mets bullpen unfortunately coughed up the lead for him, which sucked for him and sucked for our DFS purposes. I was kind of highly on the Rangers yesterday. That one didn't quite work out. I was expecting McGill to kind of get lit up, had the best start of his season. Quintana's got ability on the mound to some degree. 17.3% strikeouts in his 41 innings, 7 starts, a 3.73 ERA, but a 4.90 xFIP. Only a 0.058% home run rate in the small sample. Only 4.8% barrels, 33.3% hard hits. Last year in a full season, those numbers were similar. 2.93 ERA, 1.18%, and a 3.72 xFIP, which is much higher than the 2.93, similar to this. A 1.18% home run rate was the point I was trying to make, though, on 5.5% barrels. So has been demonstrably good the last 2 years at limiting power potential at the plate. But overall, not a very high strikeout guy. Still going up against the Rangers, even though they're sliding a little bit. There's still major talent in this Rangers lineup. So I don't know how much I want to really go to the dance with Jose Quintana here. Lefty, 6,300, 7,700. It's fine as a value dart with like really low expectations. I don't think he gets to do a lot of strikeouts. We're looking for like 6 clean innings from him. Kind of like we're looking for like the McGill start with probably fewer strikeouts. So I don't love it. But I think a value dart, especially at 6,300 on DK, it's not totally out of the question. Rangers showing a lot of power at the top of the lineup. Adolis Garcia, 11.96 in the home run model, 32 in the books on the year, a 250 ISO for 5,700, 3,700. It's a good buy right in the heart of the lineup there. He's not like aggressively discounted, but that's a very fair price for his talent. 15.5% barrels, 49.9% hard hits. One of the premium multi-category stars in the league. I mean, very, very good player for that money. 6,700, 4,100 seems high, but it's fair for Corey Seager. He's outrageously talented at 182 WRC plus, a 303 ISO at shortstop is ridiculous. 24 home runs in only 402 plate appearances, 346, 410, 649. Outrageously good. Semien at the top of the lineup, back to 6,100 on DK, 36 on FanDuel. Well worth it, doesn't strike out, hits the ball hard, 20 home runs, 13 steals, 20% better than average creating runs. Play the double play partners if you can afford it. These guys are difficult to pair with the desirable Astros bats, difficult to pair with the desirable Braves bats, but I think they're on the board for some potential upside against Quintana here. Nathaniel Lowe, good discount, 4,600, 3,300, helps you pay for these guys and this guy. Very good player at the top of the lineup, 282, 372, 448, correlates very well with his teammates. He's got 15 home runs of his own this season. Good season for Nathaniel Lowe. Mitch Garver, tons of catcher power. Austin Hedges in the lineup as the second catcher in the Rangers lineup instead of Jonah Heim today. Less appealing in terms of being the second catcher in the lineup. I don't really think you go to him that much. He does help differentiate salary at $2,100, so maybe you get a little bit out of that. But Mitch Garver's obviously the higher priority catcher in this lineup. 14.8% barrels, 47.9% hard hits, 12 homers, a 231 ISO, 137 WRC plus. Mitch has been killing it in his 226 plate appearances. Robbie Grossman, middling option, 92 WRC plus. Bottom of the lineup with Hedges at 22 WRC plus, not that appealing. Leody Taveras down to a 93, but he's still probably the more playable option than Hedges or Grossman. And then Ezekiel Duran, especially on FanDuel for 2,700 with triple position eligibility. This guy's the most playable guy at the bottom of the lineup, Ezekiel Duran, out of these four. On the Mets side, if we're attacking Andrew Heaney, which I think you can do, it's a both-sided situation in my mind. You've got a lot of power shining through for the four good power hitters in that Mets lineup. Those are also, they double as the four good hitters in that lineup, full stop. They double as the four playable guys in that lineup. It's really limited. The Mets stack is really top heavy. The bottom of the lineup is bad. Andrew Heaney, as I said in the article, it's Jekyll and Hyde. You get Dr. Andrew and Mr. Heaney, and if Mr. Heaney shows up and gives up 4 home runs today, that's going to be problematic for our DFS scoring. If Dr. Andrew shows up, brings his better strikeout rate, then we're in business for that cheap salary. 2 years ago, 26.9% strikeouts and 129 2/3, bad ERA, ugly xFIP, tons of home runs. Last year, in 72 2/3, 14 starts, monster 35.5% strikeout rate, 16.8% swinging strikes, an excellent 3.10 ERA, 2.83 xFIP in the small sample. Still tragic for power. 47.7% hard hits, 11% barrels, 4.52% home runs. He's rarely able to get through games without giving up home runs. It's just a matter of whether he gives up one and it doesn't really hurt you and he strikes out a ton of guys to offset it for DFS purposes, or does he give up 3 or 4? That's what kills us. That's what shoots us in the foot. At 7,200, 7,500, given how we projects on this board, I'm going to be a part of finding out. I like that pitcher at those prices. I'm an unapologetic, discounted Andrew Heaney fan. Once he starts getting up into the higher prices, then it's easier to get away from him. But especially against the flawed version of the Mets here, I'm happy to get to that play. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But I think he's easily on the board. Tournament winning upside for Andrew Heaney at those prices. Tournament losing downside. Easy tournament losing downside. Could ruin a very good lineup. That's a key to getting to some of those expensive hitters and could easily go bust. But one of the highest ceilings for the price relative to price. If you're going to Mets, take the guys with the double-digit home run marks. As I said, this is a firm both-sided situation. As enthusiastic as I was just about Andrew Heaney, I made Pete Alonso the overall home run pick of the day just to keep myself honest. He's also the overall slate leader at 18.89. Probably we have to ignore, ignoring all the Braves. Or actually, no, he outpaces everybody on the Braves except for Matt Olson. I had some old data for Pete Lambert when I loaded up the slate. I hadn't run a back-end update for him in a while, so it had an older home run total against a smaller sample of hitters, and the entire Braves lineup was over 20 in the home run model when I first put it together. I said, all right, maybe we should update some totals for Pete Lambert and wrangle that a little bit, but obviously a monster spot for the Braves. They were the top of the power index, the Braves. First ranked by home runs, first ranked by projections. Points per dollar is there, given even with the high prices, given the outrageous expectations. But their home run number was, come on. Oh, it's over here. Their team average, and this is talking about a game that we're not talking about right now. Their team average was 14.28. The top 6 was 16.65, basically doubling everybody else on the board. The Mets, though, their top 6, 11.04, given these good home run marks up here. Offset, obviously, Jeff McNeil dragging the home run mark down for the top 6, but some of these guys are excellent power hitters. So Pete Alonso, 39 on the season, a 298 ISO, dropped below 300, but still fantastic. 200 is a well above average ISO, a star caliber ISO. So if you're pushing 300, you're doing something right. 5,300, 3,900, easy to get to at first base. McNeil is a mix and match option. Francisco Alvarez is cooled badly. Still got 21 home runs at 225 ISO. Only costs 3,900, 2,700. Obviously, power upside for him for days in this matchup. But he's also limited 215, 289, 440, striking out 25.2% of the time. Could feed some strikeouts in Heaney's direction. Mark Vientos behind him at 30.8%. Could also feed some strikeouts. He's a fearsome power hitter based on his minor league pedigree. Hasn't really done it in the show so far. .089 ISO, 2 home runs, a 185, 226, 274 triple slash. Remember when I said the bottom of the lineup was weak? Vientos is part of that. So are these three guys who are striking out 1 in 4 times while also doing absolutely nothing at the plate. These guys cannot strike out 25% of the time. They don't offset it by doing anything. Sub Mendoza for all three of them. They're small samples. Don't get me wrong. I know these are very small samples, but these guys cannot be at this kind of a strikeout level in a sustained sense. 2 of them were around that. Locastro's been a lot better in slightly larger samples at not striking out. But the only thing he adds to the equation is a little bit of speed. Not a good hitter, not a power bat. Not a good hitter, not a power bat. Not a good hitter, not a power bat. So very dead bottom third of the Mets lineup here. Up top with Lindor and Nimmo, obviously very, very good options up there. 4,400, 2,900 is cheap for Brendan Nimmo. 19 homers on the season, a 122 WRC plus. Francisco Lindor, 24 homers, 23 steals, 214 ISO, 121 WRC plus. Dynamite shortstop option. He's too cheap at 5,100 on the DK slate. Still discounted for the perception of struggles that aren't really there for the things that we care about for DFS purposes. So it's really 1, 2, 3 as your priority bats. Probably 4 even for FanDuel stacks. Definitely your 4th man in for DK stacks. I prefer Vientos a little bit, but I get playing McNeil just for a cheap price, some correlated scoring, a little bit of positional flex. McNeil, not to constantly be targeting him as like a low-end option. 264 is okay. 332 on base is okay. .087 ISO is anemic. He needs to be far better than a 94 WRC plus to have any value to this team. If he's putting the ball in play, he's got a little bit of potential, especially to correlate with these guys if they hit home runs. But I like the spot for Heaney, scary as that might be. Andrew Heaney, Mets bats, Rangers bats, minor shares of Jose Quintana. Should probably switch the Mets and the Rangers, actually. Yeah, put the Rangers on top of the Mets in that ranking. It's pretty close, given that the Mets are outpacing them badly for power upside. It's pretty close. They're close together on the board. Both are in play. Guardians, Twins. Like some value pitching in this one. And I like the premium pitcher in this one. Let me grab the lineups. I'll pop back into the chat, see what's going on. We had minor weather concerns, by the way. The Boston game and the Baltimore game both had minor weather concerns that I forgot to mention. They both seem like they're going to play, though. Keep an eye on it, just in case. But seemed like they were going to be fine. Twins. Let's see what's happening over here. A lot of chat going on today. Love it. Love the activity, gang. Look at this. I'm scrolling back because I know some people said some nice things over there in the chat, and I wanted to read them off. Make myself feel good. You guys filled the chat with actual discussion about like DFS and stuff. Dimitri says, Terry gets us right. Learned a lot about baseball from him. I know very little to nothing, and this has become my most profitable sport. That's awesome to hear, buddy. I know you've been killing it out there. I love seeing the screenshots. Picks me up when I'm having a bad night. I've had a lot of good nights on the same days that you do, which is always nice to see. It means the things that we talk about on these shows are coming through, and you've honestly provided some very strong suggestions and things like that in both the Discord, where you give a lot of value when you're in there, and here in the chat. So I appreciate you right back, buddy. Larry says, Terry's great on these shows. I appreciate you, Larry. My bases come into play at times with I think he meant biases there, come into play at times with baseball. Yeah, especially in baseball, especially with like all the old school. If you're around our age, it's a lot of old school thinking baked into to the baseball brains going back for guys like us, Larry. So I get that. Tough for me a lot of times to keep my biases out. King of Smack says, if McGill held Texas down, Quintana will do the same. Hey, that's not out of the question. I don't necessarily think it's a one did it, the other will do it. They're different handed, and so on and so forth. And Quintana at this point good at limiting power, not necessarily as good at striking hitters out. But yeah, a struggling Tyler McGill does that. There's obviously potential for Jose Quintana or a lot of other pitchers to do it. Trey McKelly says, King of Smack, I figured these owners don't want to pay for these elite running backs, but won't move them. Stop overpaying these mediocre QBs and we'll have more money for running backs. It's interesting. I don't disagree necessarily, especially as a Giants fan who's going to lose Saquon Barkley probably. So it's it's an interesting situation for running backs, but they're so imminently replaceable as we see every single season. Star goes out, guy you never heard of, fourth stringer steps in, and all of a sudden has a star making 5 games and is a major piece of the puzzle from now on. So running back is just so highly replaceable. That's why you stop seeing running backs get picked so high in most drafts, outside of course, Saquon Barkley, which only feeds fuel to the fire for re-signing him. Like if you're going to use that draft capital on the guy and then he turns out to be a star like you expected, you've got to keep him on the goddamn team. Pisses me off. Especially when, to your exact point, they gave Danny Jones some money. That drives me bananas because I do not think Daniel Jones is all that good. But anyway, running backs have lost their luster in the NFL. Might gain it back one day, as these things tend to change. Tim Anderson, 2.4K leadoff. That's just sad. That makes me sad. Even more than it's appealing, it makes me sad. Like looking at Adam Wainwright's swinging strike rate. Larry says wide receivers are more valuable in the current NFL. Absolutely. That's why you see the receivers and the QBs get paid through the nose. Just a different game these days. It's an airborne game these days for the most part. All right, let's get into this. Mom is a former football player. That'll come in handy when we're talking football, I hope. Says, not going to chime in on the overrated value of QBs in the NFL. Mama says, I never disagreed more strongly than to say running back is replaceable. I almost hate when people say it. Interesting. I mean, I think there's a lot of evidence on the board that is the case over the past few seasons, but I'd be very curious in a different form, maybe when we fire up one of the football shows next week to hear your take on that, Mama. I mean, there's talent and there's lack of talent in spots, but there's a lot of lower end running backs that slot in and fill roles pretty effectively. Barkley is the team. I totally agree with that, Andrew. All right, let's keep on rolling, though. Don't want to get too sidetracked. Pablo Lopez, top of the board, 10-8, 11-3. Monster projection, 43.3 in the FanDuel scale. Going up against this nothing lineup of a Guardians team. Non-threatening Jose Ramirez and not all that much else for the Guardians. They're a little bit of a low strikeout group, but he's been a very, very good strikeout pitcher this season. 29.3. Got himself up to a 14.5% swinging strike rate. 3.69 ERA and a 3.40 xFIP, even better under the covers. 6.8% barrels, 3.07% hard hits on 87.7 miles an hour of exit velo, only 37% hard hits. Excellent option. Full price, paying full freight on both sides for him. He's going to be popular. I think it's one of those ones you can just ride along with the public popularity. You can go for an undercut to grab shares of other guys, but still have some. That might be my approach to him tonight, but I'm enthusiastic about the Pablo Lopez spot against this Guardians team. I want to have a fair amount of them. On the other side, I think Gavin Williams has a very good upside. He projects out very well, 32.15 in the FanDuel scale. Makes him competitive with a lot of the pitchers that we've already looked at, a lot of the premium arms on the slate. 8,600, 8,300, not priced like it, especially on FanDuel. That's a strong discount on FanDuel. Kid's got a 25.3% strikeout rate, a 3.52 ERA, 4.23 xFIP, 2.60% home run rate, limiting exit velo to the same degree at 87.7 that Pablo Lopez is on the other side. A better barrel rate allowed than Pablo Lopez at 5.2% in the smaller sample. He's been really good. He's a premium pitching prospect to every bit as much as Kyle Harrison is, who we just saw excel last night. We've seen Gavin Williams do that already in the show. He's every bit the prospect is. 8,600, 8,300 against the Twins lineup. The confirmed lineup has a 28.4% swinging strikeout rate rather. Fire away. I love the Gavin Williams spot here. Enthusiastic about it. Chuck Deuces has Gavin as 5-pitcher pool. I love that. So my dynasty team that I talk about all the time, right? This will be a quick aside. The dynasty team. Gav Williams came over in that ridiculous Luis Robert trade. Right, so he's in the dynasty pool that I get to keep his entire career. I also got, as we've talked about, I got Luis Robert. I got Gleyber Torres in that trade as a keeper forever. And I got Jackson Chourio, who might even be the best part of it to not even reach the majors yet in that trade. Just a dynamite trade for me. But the point is, that's going to lead to me having a forever options on Gav Williams. Kyle Harrison, who I already had, who we saw last night, is in my minor league pool. And I drafted Paul Skeens in that minor league pool. So I'm pretty excited about that 3-man pitcher pool. Not too bad. Skeens is dynamite. I know he had a Rocky debut in Double-A the other day in front of a sold-out ridiculous crowd in Altoona for the Curve. But if you looked at the pitches and the locations, he got burnt by some really bad calls. Somebody posted a good tweet about it and just saying, like, hey, with major league umpires, this would have been a much more successful start. Yeah, Larry Chourio looks fantastic. Really excited about that one. King of Smack, Aaron Rodgers, 70 years old, good QB. I'll love to have him as a QB for the Colts, but I guess what overpaid to be 70 years old. As I said the other day, the odds of Aaron Rodgers for the Jets working out when Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander for the Mets didn't work out as the exact same move, very, very limited. That's the same fan base. That's very limited. I do like it. I mean, it's the best thing they could have done, I think, for the quarterback position. Maybe he helps Zach Wilson grow into something going forward. But, yeah, I just don't think it works out for the Jets. All right. Let's keep going. So Gav Williams, a big play. The pitching in this one has me kind of off the bats. I do think there's a little bit of value on the Twins side of things. Very, very cheap prices. They're extreme high strikeout guys, but you get Matt Wallner climbing the lineup, hitting fifth today. A little bit of lefty pop for him. 10 home runs and 156 plate appearances, a 284 ISO, 135 WRC plus in the limited sample. Strikes out 32.7% of the time. Edouard Julien in the top spot, another lefty, 3,500, 2,800. Decent power number at 8.34 in the home run model. He's got 11 with a 193 ISO and 292 plate appearances. Strikes out 30.8% of the time. Jorge Polanco, Carlos Correa, two veteran guys, both have power. 10 home runs and 245 for Polanco. 16 homers and 511 in a down season for Correa. 24.1% strikeouts, 22.9% strikeouts. That's your core of lower strikeout rates in this lineup is Polanco, Kepler, and Correa. 21.6% strikeouts for Max Kepler is the best mark on the team. He's got 21 home runs that also leads the team. 252, 321, 490, 238 ISO, and 380 plate appearances. I like the option for Max. Royce Lewis, big grand slam, monster score last night, 153 very good plate appearances, a 204 ISO, 8 homers, 145 WRC plus. Christian Vasquez, kind of a mix and match part, but Joey Gallo's lurking at the late part of the lineup. 20 home runs, 262 ISO, still at a 103 WRC plus, despite only getting on at a 301 clip, which is in spite of 14.4% walks. 177 on the batting average, and a 43.3% strikeout rate. Just a ridiculous combination of statistics for Joey Gallo. 18.8% barrels, 54.1% hard hits. If he manages to connect, he hits home runs. Michael A. at the bottom of the lineup, one of our favorite 9 hitters in the league. 19 homers, 13 steals, nobody ever goes to him. I like going to him when I stack Twins. Does have a 33.7% strikeout rate. All of that pushes expectation in Gavin Williams' side. I think there's a very high ceiling for the kid here. Really like it. Is the ownership on Pablo Lopez very low, Mamba? Mamba says, do you think the ownership on Lopez is low because the Guardians don't strike out as much? I would guess that that's got to be the reason, but I would not have guessed that that would be the case on either side, really. Maybe it's a factor of his very high pricing, 10-8, 11-3. It's very expensive, so maybe people are just saying, hey, screw it, I'll take some value pitching, and I want to get to Braves bats. I want to get to other high-end hitting situations. Wow. Yeah. Where even is he? I just sorted by ownership and I can't even find him. No, like I literally can't find him. Where is he? Oh, there he is. Wow. Sub 1% ownership in RG's projections. Thank you, Roto Grinders, for your valuable ownership projections that I didn't mean to give away there. Shit. Well, I love that play. At low ownership, I'm happy to take it. I think you can put him in a lineup support him with value plays from his own team even. That's kind of an interesting play if you go against the Gav Williams option. I really like both of these pitchers, but that intrigues me given that he's that low owned. He projects really well on this spot. He can find strikeouts against this team. I'm not really that worried. Ramon Laureano at 28.5% this season, 27.2% last year. Cole Calhoun's only at 16.9 this year, but he was at 32.1 last year. Andres Jimenez has been a little bit better, 18.7, 20.1 last year. Oscar Gonzalez, 25.1. Bo Naylor, 27.5. Gabriel Arias is a strikeout target. He's got a lot of pop in his bat, but he's a strikeout target at 35. It's really, I mean, these two guys, outside of Steven Kwan, Jose Ramirez at the top, these guys have an average strikeout rate of 23.5%. That's not all that low. And that still includes that stupid Cole Calhoun number. Let's split the difference on Cole Calhoun between this one and that one. We'll use... fuck it, I'll just change it. Call it a 22% strikeout rate for Cole Calhoun. That puts that group at a 24.2. There's strikeouts. There are sneaky strikeouts there, I think, for Pablo Lopez in this one. That is surprising that he's that low on. The price is the difficult part. It's probably mostly price driven. People just going to other options that have a lot of value so that they can roster the expensive bats. So maybe we expect to see even more aggressive ownership around the Braves. Yeah, like Raggins is going to be super popular. Shannon Lambert points out. We'll get to that play in a little bit. All the high-end pitchers on DK are under 6% on DK, says Larry. Interesting. The Department of Redundancy Department. On either site, you might see some top arms, but it's going to be more Raggins, Cobb, and Kramer. Yeah, and I like all three of those spots, as we talked about. Wow. I am very surprised it's that low, though. I think it's a slate where if that's going to be the case, I'm happy to take some shots with those high-end pitchers and see if I can win it with other bats. I mean, there's no guarantee that those specific offense spots are going to go off, and there's plenty of ways to get to these pitchers with value bats in other spots. I'm kind of intrigued. So if you're rostering these teams, again, it's Pablo, it's Gavin Williams, and then some value for the Twins, a little bit of home run potential against Gav. Not that he's given up a ton, but they've just got some good home run hitters in that lineup for very cheap prices. And then very, very limited exposure to anything on the Guardians. Prioritize Jose Ramirez. You can build in like Andres Jimenez around him. Gabe Arias from the 9 spot. Maybe you wrap him around, but that's not really an effective wraparound hitter. You're looking to do that with good on base and hit tool guys. He's a power hitter and a high strikeout guy. So I don't really like him from the 9 spot. Bo Naylor, a little bit of sneaky catcher power. Very limited Guardians lineup. Let's keep on trucking. That ownership question surprised me and took me off track for a moment there. Grab the Pods lineup here. I will try and get a better handle on coming up with a way to project ownership at some point. It's just never something I bothered with because Awesemo did it so well that I just use theirs always. And I don't really, without a backbone of historical ownership to reference, which I've just never gotten around to starting to compile, it's just kind of difficult to figure out exactly how to put it together. I could do something like points per dollar gives you this expectation on this kind of a team with, certain run totals or something, but I'm not entirely sure how it's done. But that's something I'll crack at some point. Mama says your reaction is the same as mine looking at Pablo Lopez. Sorry for the sidetrack. No, dude, that was totally worthwhile. Sidetrack. That's a critical point on this slate that I had missed, quite honestly. So, yeah, that's kudos to you for shouting it out. It does look like on that other site, out of the guys that I consider premium starters anyway, it does look like Kirby and Steele are drawing some ownership. Just a little bit less expensive than the Lopez's of the world. That's FanDuel. I don't know where they're at for DK. But I like both of those options just as much. But it does look like some of the ownership that I expected on Lopez is going in their directions, which is interesting. So let's see. Cardinals, Zach Thompson, 5,600, 5,900. Projects out okay enough. I don't love the option, but for the extreme cheap pricing, given that everybody's going to be flocking to the Raggins, to so on and so forth for for a little bit more money, Zach Thompson, 28.8% strikeouts with a 3.86 ERA, a 3.08 xFIP in 35 innings, 3 starts, back-to-back starts of 5 innings each. It's actually fascinating. He went 5 innings both times against the Mets and the Pirates. He faced 22 hitters in each game. He struck out 5 hitters in each game. He walked 1 in each game, allowed a home run, exactly 2 earned runs, and exactly 6 hits in both of those starts. If we get that over 5 innings against the Padres for this money, that's kind of effective. I think he's on the board as a value dart. It's not a great matchup against the Padres. They're top heavy. We know that. We know there's some flawed hitters down toward the bottom of the lineup. There's some gettable strikeout options in certain spots in the lineup. I think there's a little bit of a path to success given how cheap he is. I wouldn't take him out of the pool, at least. I would let him compete for shares with the Cole Ragginses of the world, given how cheap he is. The upside is more limited. The innings are probably more limited. He's given up a lot of premium contact with 44.7% hard hits, 90.2 miles an hour of exit velo, but he hasn't really gotten burnt because it's been on a 6.9 degree average launch, only 6.4% barrels, 2.61% home run rate. This is all in a very small sample, 35 innings, partly out of the bullpen. There was a 4-inning start and a 4-inning bulk relief appearance immediately prior to those 2 identical 5-inning starts. But given the potential to go, 5, maybe into the 6th if he's pitching well, find a few strikeouts, hopefully pitching fairly clean innings, even if he gives up a homer or whatever and a pair of runs again. For these prices, it's not awful. Seth Lugo on the other side, 7,900 in play on the DK board. Not so much on FanDuel. 96. That's not all that comfortable. I'd rather find another 2,000 and change and get my way up to Pablo Lopez than pay 96 for Seth Lugo in this spot. The Cards are a limited offense. They haven't been good collectively, but they do have a ton of good hitters in that lineup. A 3.89 run total in Vegas is not at all inspiring, but they're showing a little bit of power through the lineup. 9.92 in the model for Paul Goldschmidt, 11.9 for Nolan Gorman, 10.6 for Nolan Arenado, 22, 24, and 26 home runs for those 3 hitters. Richie Palacios off the top, not at actually a 0. 24 plate appearances, has a home run on the board, 217 ISO in the tiny sample, 132 WRC plus. Interesting choice for the leadoff spot, lefty. I get it. I was expecting Tommy Edman, but doesn't look like he's in the lineup at all, which makes sense. He's got a sub on 300 on base percentage at this point. I like Edman, but he's kind of not been as everything that I would hope when he lands in that leadoff spot lately. Wilson Contreras, playable catcher, 4,200. Pretty cheap for a catcher with 13 homers, 114 WRC plus, in a very good spot in the lineup. Decent for drawing walks, very good contact numbers, 45.5% hard hits, 11.1% barrels. Stout catcher bat. I like the spot for William Contreras a little bit better, given that he hits second every day. Alec Burleson, limited 3,300, 2,200. Tyler O'Neill, tons of righty power. Limited season for him, 220 plate appearances, 7 homers, 4 steals, a 169 ISO. Is at 102 WRC plus. He's fine. Not really delivering as much as we want, but still a 12.6% barrel rate, 44.4% hard hits. Just needs to see more plate appearances really to get fully engaged in the season. He's just been in and out too much. Jordan Walker, mixed bag of quality, 11 home runs, 6 steals, a 105 WRC plus, up and down for the triple slash and 344 plate appearances, but not bad for 35-25. Mason Wynn hasn't done much in 33 plate appearances, but a fairly highly regarded kid. I do think you can roster some cards against Seth Lugo, but it's kind of a limited spot. He's good enough, 23.6% strikeouts, doesn't really walk anybody, 3.70 ERA on the season, 3.64 xFIP. Gives up a little bit of contact, but another guy who is fairly decent at limiting launch angle. Limits home runs to 3.09%. So not an outrageous spot for the Cards. Not a great spot for Seth Lugo on FanDuel. An okay spot for Seth Lugo at 7,900 on DK. Definitely put some Zach Thompson on the board, 56-59. And then if you're going to Cards, which I do think you can do against Zach Thompson here, Ha-Sung Kim, Juan Soto, Manny Machado, Fernando Tatis down at cleanup again today. Very, very strong options from the top 4. Xander Bogaerts is underpriced for his talent at 2,800, 4,800. He's underperforming his talent this year, but still at a 105 WRC plus, some value there at shortstop. And I still I expect him to have a good September. Like every month of the season that he's been scuffling, I keep saying like I expect him to turn it around. I expect a good month. He hasn't been tragic, just not up to Xander Bogaerts type standards, but price is down. Garrett Cooper, sneaky maybe for a little bit of pop, 2,800, 2,400 at first base, 14 homers on the season, a 167 ISO, a playable part in stacks with Padres. I didn't mean to put the Spanish accent on the Padres there. Luis Campusano, that's where I meant to put it. Matthew Batten, Jose Azocar, limited options at the bottom of the lineup. Campusano's been pretty good. 283, 323, 457, a 174 ISO, 115 WRC plus, and 4 homers in 99 plate appearances. Not a terrible option down at the catcher spot instead of Gary Sanchez. So playable parts at pitcher, except for Seth Lugo on the FanDuel slate. I really don't like that spot at all. Playable parts at the plate, but I don't love either one of the options. So kind of a 4 corners, no corners type of a situation. But I do think it's more of a play than a don't play on all 4 corners. Except for Lugo on FanDuel. The Thompson play, by the way, again, this is low expectations. We're just doing it for value. We're just doing it to differentiate who our value play is and save a few extra bucks beyond what the people who roster Cole Ragans is. There's a strong possibility that going to Zach Thompson instead of Cole Ragans gets you an additional one key member of the Braves if that's your thing. That could be a critical few $100s. Milwaukee Brewers, Chicago Cubs. Talked about this one tangentially, obliquely. Referred to this one earlier in the show. That's probably what I should just say. Brewers lineup is here. So is the Cubbies. Let's get to it. Really like the opportunity for Justin Steele in this spot. Like I said, he was getting a little bit of popularity according to one site, but who knows? 10-6 is pretty high on FanDuel. 9-5 on DK. I could see him getting popular around that number. But 10-6 is not that far off that Pablo Lopez price that it would draw like crazy attention on FanDuel as compared to Lopez. So I'm very curious to see how this one works out. I like the option a lot. He projects out very well on the model. 2.80 ERA, a 3.62 xFIP. Doesn't really get in trouble by only walking 5.2%, a 1.17 whip. Decent swinging strike rate. Very good at limiting power. 23.2% strikeouts. Solid option to throw at the Brewers here. There's not a ton of strikeouts in the Brewers, but there's enough. And he's talented enough to find a few bonus strikeouts on the right night. So I like the option for Steele. The power limiting was in play last year. His first full season, 119 innings, 24 starts, 1.56% home run rate on 33.3% hard hits, 3.9% barrels. This year, that's similar, 6% barrels, 35.7% hard hits, 1.92% home runs. Very good at keeping power in check. I feel like every time I get too deep into keeping power in check, somebody goes out and gives up 3 home runs. But hopefully that won't be the case for Steele tonight because I plan to have him. The Brewers on the other side, kind of limited by his ability to do that. I do think that if you're going there, Christian Yelich, obviously you're getting 5,200, 3,700 is the key play in that lineup. And then you're getting some value from William Contreras, who I just mentioned before. I do like the opportunity to roster a catcher hitting second, kind of like Adley Rutschman, just gains plate appearances. Also a good bat, 279, 355, 461, 22% better than average creating runs, 14 homers. Mark Canha, a playable option in the middle of the lineup, hitting third today with Adames hitting cleanup. There's power for Adames, but not much else. Strikes out too much, doesn't really hit for average, doesn't get on base, doesn't really create runs. Monasterio, 94 WRC plus, limited in terms of power or any kind of statistical output. Joey Wiemer, back in the lineup, 2,200 on both sites. I actually kind of like that option. If I'm building stacks of Brewers, Wiemer's probably going to be a big part of them. Only an 80 WRC plus, but 13 homers, 11 steals, and 385. There's a little something there. An okay contact profile. Victor Caratini, an okay contact profile, is a backup catcher for 2,700, 2,500. A mix-in option in a weird 2-catcher configuration for the Brewers. Bryce Turang, okay for counting stats, 17 steals, but only a 67 WRC plus. Tyrone Taylor, a 64 WRC plus, 5 home runs and 158 plate appearances, hit 17 last year as kind of a sneaky power option. On the mound for the Brewers, Corbin Burnes, 10-6, 10-3. Significantly down from the Corbin Burnes that we know season over season. 30.5% last year in terms of strikeouts, 35.6% the year before, down to 24.9%. 3.65 ERA, a 3.98 xFIP on the season. Still very good at limiting power. 2.96% home runs, 86 miles an hour, call it 87 miles an hour of exit velo, 32.9% hard hits, 5.5% barrels. Assuming that we get something resembling the good form of Corbin Burnes, I definitely think there's upside. He's got one of the highest ceilings on the slate. He just hasn't been that guy in most of his starts this year. Still works mostly deep into ball games. He's got, let me see, come on. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 starts in a row pitched into at least the 6th inning. But a lot of those starts, only a handful of strikeouts. 5 strikeouts seems to be about like the most common number in there. But there's also a 13 strikeout game, a 10 strikeout game, a 9 strikeout game in there. He's given up a ton of home runs. 3 home runs in his last game against that lousy Twins team. Struck out 5, walked 1, gave up 6 on 8 hits in 6 innings. 9 strikeouts, no earned runs, no home runs, 2 hits in 7 innings against the Dodgers of all teams. The start before that at Los Angeles. Home runs, limited strikeouts for 3 straight starts, 4 straight starts before that. Handful of earned runs across those performances. It's been so mixed. It's been so up and down. It's so unreliable this year. I do think he's in play. I will have some probably. He projects out okay. But as far as like the cost, the points per dollar, not great. He was only kind of in the middle of the board at that number with guys that are a lot lower priced. Very high ceiling, limited projection for Corbin Burnes here. Not that that's going to really lead me to too many shares of the Cubbies bats. A team that I do like getting to on a lot of slates. Only a 3.46 implied run total in Vegas. Vegas kind of seeing a pitching duel here. If you're going to Cubbies, I think you grab some Mike Tauchman off the top. You guys know I think that Nico Hoerner's a little bit high priced for what he does at the plate. 102 WRC plus, 34 steals, 280, 338, 396. He's fine. He's okay. If he was lower priced hitting down here, he'd be better. Ian Happ, 4,400, 3,000. Make your money right back by just including Happ alongside Hoerner. It averages the salary down for the guy who actually deserves it. 16 homers, 11 steals, at 359 on base, a 114 WRC plus. Nice solid season for Ian Happ. Cody Bellinger, 64, 38. Totally worth it in the middle of the lineup. 20 homers, 18 steals. Dansby Swanson, 19 homers at shortstop. Very effective shortstop bat. Limited season in terms of his speed. Limited season in terms of his run creation being only at 107. He's been better than that in seasons past, but a very high-end shortstop on any given slate. Seiya Suzuki, Heimer Candelario, Chris Morel, and Yan Gomes, honestly. Decent amount of power down there in the lineup. So if you're trying to target some power upside against Corbin Burnes, which isn't necessarily the greatest idea in the world, there is plenty to work with here in the Chicago lineup. A lot of guys in the mid-teens for home runs. A lot of guys who put bat on ball exceptionally well. John Gomes, 9 homers and a 153 ISO in his 329 plate appearances. Not terrible. Justin Steele, unreliable Corbin Burnes. Cubs bats right on his heels. Brewers bats for value is a very limited option, but I do think they make the value board. Look at all these really cheap prices on FanDuel. All these really cheap prices on DK. It's not a good option. Steele has a very good shot at least keeping them low scoring, if nothing else. And he's got a higher ceiling than that, obviously. But I do think, given how cheap they are, they're on the board a little bit. They'll probably come up a decent amount in optimizers, especially with like your Brave stacks, your Astros stacks. Let's move on. Pirates. Luis Ortiz. I had to go in and correct the stats. These are the correct stats, yeah. 11 starts for this Luis Ortiz for the Pirates. The other guy plays for the Phillies. 57 innings, 14.5% strikeouts, 11.5% walks, a 5.38 xFIP, a 1.84 whip. You picking up what I'm getting at yet? 12.1% barrels, 50% hard hits, 92.4 miles an hour of exit velo, a 4.09% home run rate, a 5.37 ERA. This is a bad pitcher. 5,600. I don't think he's on the board, even against the Royals. I don't know how much I want to get to the Royals. I was expecting the flash more power. There's a slight chance that some of these power marks are against the other Luis Ortiz, so take it for what it's worth. Given that they're so cheap, there's a little bit of value potential for the Royals. Let me grab the actual lineup. Pirates, their lineup is in too. Let me grab them. So Kansas City, if we're going there, we're obviously going to Bobby Witt as our top priority bat. 11.6% barrels, 44.3% hard hits, 26 homers, 38 steals, a 116 WRC plus. He's a fantastic option at shortstop on any given slate. Given all the premium contact, the low strikeouts, the high walks, he looks like a terrific play against this pitcher today. Michael Garcia, kind of a limited option, 279, 325, 372, a .092 ISO. 19 steals is good, but only 87 WRC plus. Just not enough of a contributor. 50.2% hard hits is actually very good, but only 4.6% barrels. I think he's in play given that he leads off ahead of Bobby Witt, Sal Perez, MJ Melendez, Nelson Velasquez to a lesser degree. But kind of a limited guy, especially at third base. 4,200 is the right price, but third base kind of sucks. Shortstop for 26. Now you got to put him at util if you want to roster him with Bobby Witt on FanDuel, or you got to put him at third base, which again sucks just relative to the other options of the position. It's kind of a limited player, just for DFS purposes. Sal Perez, definite upside, 19 homers on the season, a 167 ISO. Not a great Sal Perez season, but obviously double home run upside. MJ Melendez, weird output given his ridiculous contact profile. Said it once, I said it 1,000 times this year. 11.8% barrels, 51.1% hard hits, but only a 156 ISO. Just a weird combination. 15% worse than average creating runs. Velasquez, 8 home runs and only 78 plate appearances, 18.5% barrels. That's kind of interesting. 3,200, 122 WRC plus in the small sample. If you're going to Royals, I would include him as kind of a fairly high priority bat there. Drew Waters, Freddie Fermin, Michael Massey, Dairon Blanco rounding out the lineup. Kind of weekend bottom of the lineup here. Freddie Fermin, 277, 309, 476, 107 WRC plus does give you a capable enough bat as your secondary catcher, but really, how many times do we want Freddie Fermin over Sal Perez? Not that many. Mr. Raggins, 28.7% strikeouts is very, very good in your 6 starts, your 59 innings. 3.66 ERA, a 3.62 xFIP is very good. He is who he looks like in terms of the runs allowed. 2.02% home run rate, a 5.3% barrel rate. Very good for the premium contact numbers. Raggins has put up, whoops, not Pat Ragan. No, God damn it. Pat Ragan, 1909 to 1923. Not the guy we're talking about. Raggins has made 1, 2, 3, call it 4. 4 out of his last 5 starts. Very, very good. All 6 starts have been in a row, so we'll include the 6th one. The first one was a 5-inning performance against the Rays. Struck out 3, gave up a run, 4 hits, not great. Next start against the Mets, 8 Ks, no earned runs, did give up 7 hits. At Boston, 11 strikeouts, monster performance. Gave up 2 runs, 1 earned on 4 hits. Solid performance against the Cardinals, but not great for DFS purposes. 5 innings, 24 batters, 5 strikeouts, but 4 walks. 4 runs allowed, 3 earned on 6 hits. 9 strikeout game against the Cubbies at Chicago. 3 earned runs allowed, 2 walks, 8 hits. 11 strikeouts, monster performance against the Athletics. Temper expectations. 2 hits, 5 no earned runs, 6 innings. I do think there is a strong opportunity for Cole Raggins to post a very good start here. I don't disagree at all with the projection. I don't disagree at all with the idea that he should be owned, that he's a publicly popular play, but I do think I want to roster some Pirates on the other side of this equation. Not because they're good, just because he's going to be so popular. Because he's not elite at limiting walks, limiting hits, 9.7% walks, 1.27 whip, 3.66 ERA is very good, 3.62 xFIP is very, very good. This is very good. We're going to need the Pirates to sequence. We're going to need a Jack Suwinski to come through and find a lefty-lefty home run or something for us, or Leover Peguero to hit a cheap late lineup home run for this to work out. I think they're on the board. This is a low priority, low expectation play. But when we're hunting for value on a slate like this, you can't ignore a team with these low prices, with some capable guys who have been a little bit frisky. It's not a good spot, but it's a interesting angle into the tournament, if nothing else. Put it that way. If you're going to Pirates like I am, and again, small doses, this is not one to get carried away with. Properly set expectations. I'm going to stop shaking the entire table as I talk about the Pirates. Brian Hayes, 4,300, 3,000, 10 home runs, 9 steals, a much better contact profile than what he delivers statistically. Up to a 97 WRC plus, has a shot to finish the season above average. I like the option for very cheap at third base, 4,300, 3,000. He's a guy I don't mind getting at third base given how hard he hits the ball. It's just a lack of overall output in terms of the 10 home runs, the 167 ISO. But I don't mind Brian Hayes at third base, whereas like at Michael Garcia, given what he does at the plate, is more limited. Although, as I said, Garcia does have a higher hard hit rate than Brian Hayes. Lower barrel rate, lower home run total in similar amount of plate appearances. I just believe in Brian Hayes a lot more. Brian Reynolds, 11.3% barrels, 47.7% hard hits. We're going to need some Brian Reynolds action tonight. 18 homers, 10 steals, 108 WRC plus. A middling kind of a season for a guy who's supposed to be their star player, but an important piece of the puzzle for anybody going to Pirates today. McCutchen draws walks, might exploit this Cole Ragans walk rate a couple times. 12 homers, 10 steals, gets on at a 370 clip, creates runs 11% better than average. Connor Joe, better against lefties, so he picks up a little value here, 3,400, 2,400. 9 home runs on the season, a 113 WRC plus, hits the ball pretty hard with a 183 ISO, 42.2% hard hits. Andy Rodriguez, I was hoping we would get him. It was Jason DeLay when I did the projected lineup. 3,100, 2,400. I like this opportunity for Andy Rodriguez. 6.8% barrels, 38.4% hard hits. 2 home runs in his tiny sample of 112 plate appearances. A kid that they really believe in. A kid we've seen put bat on ball pretty well so far. I like the option for the switch hitting prospect hitting 5th. Josh Palacios, 2,700, 2,200. 6 cheap home runs in 192 plate appearances. Not great, but has been cheap, has been sneaky, and has provided a little bit of upside in irregular form. Leo Peguero, who I mentioned before, 2,900, 2,600, shortstop, second base. Love the positioning, love the pricing. 5 cheap home runs, 4 stolen bases in 108 plate appearances. The contacts come down. The WRC plus is only at 81. I'm just chasing some cheap counting stats at a good position for Leo Peguero for cheap pricing. Sawinski, lefty, 3,600, 2,700, 21 home runs on the season. Let's see how many of them are against fellow lefties. I don't think it's that many. It is, drum roll, 1. 1 of his 21 home runs has come against the lefty. A .095 ISO as compared to 272 against right-handed pitching. A 56 WRC plus as compared to a 122. 190, 281, 286 as compared to 208, 349, 479. Obviously, Jack Sawinski a much better option against righties. The hope is we chase Cole Ragans and we get into that atrocious Royals bullpen pretty quick. And then we've got some options for Jack Sawinski. Ji-Hwan Bae, mix and match option, second base and outfield on both sides. He's cheap. He can put the ball in play okay. 21 stolen bases, but only a 72 WRC plus. Limited option at the bottom of the lineup. Very limited doses of Pirates. I think Cole Ragans has the more likely opportunity to succeed. It's just with the weight of the world on him in terms of public ownership as the value play du jour that everybody's fallen in love with. Maybe there's a little something for Pirates in a contrarian kind of angle. Ragans, Pirates bats, Royals bats, no Luis Ortiz. Both sides of the equation in terms of the bats are limited. Neither side is one to get overly excited about. Grab these lineups. Braves lineup looks to be in its everyday, fully healthy form, which is just going to be interesting for this slate. They might score conservatively 247 runs against Peter Lambert before the end of the first inning. This one could be over in a hurry. Peter Lambert, 71 1/3, 20.6% strikeouts. It leaves a lot of contact on the table for the Braves, but maybe it's not premium contact. Maybe he's really good, even though a good pitcher to nope, 11.4% barrels, 44.8% hard hits, 90.8 miles an hour of exit velo, 4.65% home run rate in 71 1/3, 8 starts. And I remind you, he's facing the Atlanta Braves at Coors Field. Braves, top to bottom. Put them together in any combination that you can figure out, any combination that you could possibly afford. Easier to get to on FanDuel. FanDuel's a little bit generous, leaving Ozzie Albies at 38. Riley and Olsen are expensive relative to other FanDuel prices, but relative to their talents, relative to the relative DK pricing, they're cheap. 5,200 for Acuna is the highest price on FanDuel. 7,000 is the highest priced hitter on the DK slate. Peter Lambert on the other side is what, 2/3 the price of Ronald Acuna, the hitter he's facing. 6,900 for Matty Olson. He's right there with Acuna. Olson was the overall slate leader at 22.6 for a home run tonight. He's got 43 on the season, a 325 ISO. And then it was Pete Alonso, and then it was like the rest of this lineup at the top of the home run board. 7 guys in the Braves lineup above the magic number for home run power, and the other 2 are our favorite guys from the bottom of lineups, Orlando Arcia and Michael Harris, who had 15 home runs and 12 home runs respectively, who have a 280, 336, 442 triple slash and a 110 WRC plus, and a 285, 332, 451 and a 109 WRC plus. These guys are putting up very similar, very good seasons from the bottom 2 parts in the lineup. Michael Harris, 5,300, 3,800. Those are appropriate prices for his talent. 4,733 for Orlando Arcia at shortstop. Sean Murphy, excellent catcher option, 12.83 in the home run model, 5,900. You play him on both sides, play him like he's a first baseman on FanDuel. Ozuna, Rosario, this is a fantastic lineup from top to bottom. Any possible configuration of getting Braves into your life. Like I said yesterday, the one decision just going into the slate, the first thing you should do is just say, the Braves are going to be here by the public. This is where I want to be. Whether that's above or below, just make a decision on where you want to be relative to the field. I had a massive share of Braves yesterday. It worked out fairly well. Rockies, very limited option. They almost put Charlie Morton on the board. I think he needs to be a little bit cheaper. 85 is almost there on DK. You could probably justify a couple of darts, but just on a deep slate with so many options at similar prices who project better, who aren't pitching at Coors Field, it just seems like an unnecessary stretch. It seems like getting cute for cute's sake, a little too cute. 98 on FanDuel is just a wild misprice. I like Charlie Morton. I think Charlie Morton's a good pitcher, but he should be cheaper than that at Coors Field. 25.5% strikeouts, 3.37 ERA, a 4.14 xFIP. Another very strong season for Charlie Morton. 2.11% home run rate, limits power very effectively, finds his strikeouts. I expect him to have a fair game here. Maybe gives up a handful of runs. The Rockies were totaled at like 4.8 or something like that. 3-4 runs seems realistic, up to 5 or 6. But, a decent but not slate relevant score from Charlie Morton is kind of what I expect here, somewhere around where he's projected there. If you go to Rockies on the other side, they're always the lower owned part of the equation at Coors Field. I do think it makes some sense. Morton is not unhittable. He hasn't been bad by any means, and they are bad, but he's not unhittable. He's vulnerable to some of these lefties. Charlie Blackmon, Ryan McMahon, Nolan Jones, top priority bats in that lineup. Harold Castro, another fairly interesting lefty, more of a hit tool-oriented line drive hitter, but a capable enough bat late in the lineup. And then you get interesting mix-in parts. Ezequiel Tovar, for as lousy as he's been on the whole with a 78 WRC+, 8 stolen bases, 15 steals, not completely inept. Elias Diaz, 4,200, 3,300, a valuable enough catcher given that he's hitting cleanup at Coors Field today. 13 home runs on the season, 86 WRC+. Again, not inspiring on the run creation mark, but really nobody on this team should be. Nolan Jones is their best player, 4,600, 3,600, 13 home runs, a 113 WRC+ on the season. Hunter Goodman, we talked about his 34 home runs over AA and AAA on the way up this season. Adds an interesting option, first base on DK, catcher on FanDuel, 2,500, 3,000. So interesting option here. I wouldn't sleep on Hunter Goodman for a little bit of upside for cheap pricing. Toglia and Brenton Doyle, very limited options. Toglia, believable projectable power from the minor leagues, has not delivered at all in the show, 29 WRC+ over 145 plate appearances. Brenton Doyle, a more complete sample in 328 plate appearances. That's basically a half season. 8 home runs, 17 stolen bases. We've chased those a couple times from the bottom of the lineup, but overall, Sub Mendoza in a fair sample, 245 on base percentage and a 34 WRC+. The fact that these 3 guys they're small, but they're not crazy small samples. There's a couple hundred plate appearances apiece here. They're all getting on base way under a 300 on base percentage. That is disgusting. Yikes. If you're below a 300 on base, you are not getting on base enough. If you're below like a 320 on base, you're not good enough to play in my lineup. If you're below a 280, you're really not very good at all. If you're below 250, you do not belong in the major leagues. These guys have time. They're young players. They're still finding their footing, but this is not a good start. Very limited options in the Rockies lineup. I like the lefties. If I'm going there, I'll go there a few times, but not like crazy. It'll be a handful of shares. Castro's interesting given triple position eligibility at 2,500 though. Braves bats. It's actually written on the ceiling up there. It just says Braves bats. That's how high they rank. And then the Rockies bats are like here. Charlie Morton's probably above the Rockies bats, but I just don't think I go there. I don't think you have to go there. I don't think you should go there. But I would actually have Charlie Morton above the Rockies bats. That's how poorly I think of this team. All of their terrible numbers include all their games at Coors Field. That's how bad they are. But I do think you can grab a few shares of them as a contrarian position. Athletics Mariners, George Kirby. As I mentioned, he was also drawing a little bit of popularity the last I saw. Well warranted. One of the best matchups in all of baseball. We have talked the last couple of days about the Athletics do show a little bit of odd power in this lineup now. A lot of premium contact focused guys, but a lot of strikeouts. Tons and tons of strikeouts, mostly from these guys who swing for the fences. Ryan Noda back in the lineup, has a 382 on base on the back of a 17.4% walk rate. But it's going to be interesting to see how that combines with George Kirby, who has a 2.3% walk rate in a phenomenal season for limiting opportunities. 2.3% walk rate is microscopic. That is fantastic. 1.03 whip just doesn't allow opportunities, doesn't put guys on base. 23% strikeouts, it could be higher, but it's fine, especially when you're not giving up any opportunities. Also doesn't really give up any power. 2.75% home run rate on 7.6% barrels. 3.28 ERA, a 3.55 xFIP. Plenty of strikeouts on in that lineup for him. I love the spot for George Kirby here. 9,700 is too cheap for this opportunity on DK. He should be wildly popular at this price on DK. I know it's not premium starter day, but George Kirby is a plus starter for a very cheap price in this spot. 10-8 on FanDuel. I plan to have a lot. I hope he goes under-owned. I really do. I hope he goes under-owned. I hope Pablo goes under-owned, especially on the single starter side. Like, there's no actual security in Cole Ragans. There's no actual security in Dean Kramer or any of these other guys, even against lousy teams. There's a lot more security in a George Kirby. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's definitely going to work. Don't get me wrong. But the floor is much more secure. Interesting option. I like the spot a lot. I don't really see the need to go to too many Athletics, given his knack for taking power away, given his knack for limiting walks. So some of those, decent walk rates, some of the okay on base guys, kind of limited in what they do on the day. Zach Geloff, very pricey at 55.39, 10 home runs, 9 stolen bases, a 149 WRC plus in his very quick 169 plate appearances. Seth Brown, lefty, interesting, 3,500, 2,500, 11 home runs, believable power from the left side, good contact profile. Brent Rooker, 3,900, 2,800 is very cheap for a guy with a 14.8% barrel rate, 48.1% hard hits, 22 home runs, 221 ISO. It's a race to 25 for Brent Rooker. I don't know. September's getting here. It's almost October. 31.9% strikeouts for Brent Rooker. Obviously targetable. Shea Langoliers is targetable with 29% strikeouts. Lawrence Butler, 24. Jonah Bride, 20. A lot of limited options down here. Double-digit WRC plus marks. 3 of these guys are above average. That's Noda, Geloff, and Brent Rooker are above average for run creation on the season. Everybody else well below. Very bad lineup. Not really a hedge position in my mind. The team I want to get to here is the Seattle Mariners. Love the opportunity for the Mariners once again. Looks like their lineup just dropped. It's probably the same exact lineup we're looking at. So we're not rostering Kenny Waldichuk here. Scuffling his way through the season. It's been okay in a few spots, but overall, just not good. 21.8% strikeout rate. That's okay, but an 11.6% walk rate doesn't combine well with it. A 4.12% home run rate gives him all kinds of trouble. 5.02 xFIP under a 6.05 ERA. Just not good. Not pitching effectively. There are strikeouts in the Mariners lineup. He could pop to an okay strikeout total, but I greatly prefer targeting him for power. I greatly prefer just going to some of these very good Mariners bats. So it's J.P. Crawford off the top for his excellent on base and his correlated scoring ability, a 131 WRC plus, 384 on base. Julio Rodriguez up to 286, 346, 482 with a 196 ISO, a 131 WRC plus, 24 homers, 35 steals, 11.2% barrels and 52% hard hits as approaching the contact level that he put up last year. He's going to end the season above last year's stats if he keeps this up. It's just been an outrageous run. Fantastic month. Keyed their entire surge to a playoff spot. Just realized I don't know if I have placeholders in, which would suck because this tournament's probably full because it's 540. Let me see if I can do that while I talk about the Mariners. So Julio, obviously a very, very strong option for 6,200, 4,500. definitely a priority bat in that Mariners stack. But then you get into some fairly, oh good, there's still spots. You get into some fairly discounted options, given their power upside, given the contact they're making, the home runs they're delivering. There's a lot of strikeouts on guys like Eugenio Suarez, Teoscar Hernandez, but there's tons of power available. 7.71 for Eugenio, 7.64 in the home run model for Teoscar, 18 homers, 22 homers, 107, 109 WRC plus. Everybody in the Mariners lineup except for Dominic Canzone, who I do like at the bottom of the lineup, creating runs better than average in their season so far. So I think there's a ton of opportunity here against a very flawed pitcher. Ty France is on the board, 4,200. Flawed season for Ty France, not hitting as much power as he did. The triple slash is way down overall, but the run creation's still been okay. In the heart of the lineup for a cheap price on a team that we want to get to, I can go to that option. Cal Raleigh, tons and tons of power, leads the team with 25 home runs on the season and 8.69 in the home run model, 13.5% barrel rate. Dylan Moore, we talked about the odd uptick in premium contact yesterday for him, sitting in at 22.8% barrel rate over 109 plate appearances. That was 12.8% last year, though, so maybe there's a little bit of believable potential at the plate for power. 3 positions, 2,400 on FanDuel, 2 positions, 3,200 on DK. Strong value option, if nothing else, late in the lineup here. I got to a fair amount of them yesterday in a pretty strong portfolio of Mariner stacks. Canzone, Caballero, functional parts at worst late in the lineup. Canzone, decent little contact profile, 3 home runs in 115 plate appearances. Is below average for run creation, but a cheap outfielder. I think you can easily get to him. And then Caballero, 364 on base percentage, 25 stolen bases. Nice option to wrap around and just reset the table for these guys. So I don't mind him, 25 multi-position on DK, 23 triple position in the infield on FanDuel. Sneaky little option down there. Not a premium bat, not a guy you want to have in 20 of 20 Mariner stacks, but if you use him 5 times in 20 Mariner stacks, that's not bad. Oh, let me just get these in real quick here. So we're not rostering that many shares of Athletics. Very limited exposure, if any. We're definitely George Kirby up top. Seattle bats. No real love for Athletics. No real love for Kenny Waldichuk. So it's kind of a no-no in Oakland. 2 games to go. Reds against the Giants. How about that Kyle Harrison one last time? Monster performance for that kid last night. That doesn't really have bearing on the fact that Alex Cobb is projecting so well. He's just projecting really well because he's a really good pitcher, and there's a ton of strikeouts in this more limited version of the Reds lineup. So I quite like the spot for Alex Cobb. Seems like he's going to get some popularity. 6,800, 7,900. I know he projects pretty well around town. I'm going to probably try and get to a little bit more. I think I would naturally, even without trying. But I don't think I'm going to limit my exposure to Cobb. I really like this spot. I'll probably hedge with a couple of red stacks because I do think guys like Elly De La Cruz, Christian Encarnacion Strand, Spencer Steer, they get interesting when nobody goes to them. Will Benson, if he's back in the lineup. If nobody's on them, they get interesting. They're fairly affordable. So I don't mind the Reds option, but it's very limited. A handful of stacks at most. They don't project well at all for home run potential. That's something that Cobb does very, very well over time, is limit home runs. This year it's up a little bit. I feel like this is one of those pitchers that the last couple times I've mentioned his ability to limit home runs. He's given up a home run at least in each of those starts, up to a 2.82% home run rate. But that comes on only 1.3 degrees of average launch. 7.3% barrels. Those are the barrels are up from the 3.7 last year. Launch angle's right about the same, actually a little bit better. The home runs are up obviously from 1.43 to 2.82, but overall still a very good pitcher at limiting premium contact and limiting power. So I like the opportunity for Cobb. He's got a good enough strikeout rate at 20.6%. He's been higher than that in seasons past. So I think there's an excellent opportunity for him to make a functional replication of that Kyle Harrison start last night as another strong value play against this Reds team. Giants against Brandon Williamson. 6,500, 7,300 for Williamson. He projects out okay. That's a mid-board, lower mid-board projection for a value play. 65, 73. It's not far off from those more expensive, higher-end pitchers who were projecting it like just 28, like Corbin Burns and guys like that. Given that Williamson's at this level against this Giants team that's not all that good against lefties, they're heavily right-handed in this projected configuration. We'll find out what's in the confirmed version of the lineup. Oh, we did have the confirmed Reds lineup. Nothing I said about the Reds wouldn't apply. I'll grab it. We can talk about it. But yeah, maybe a little bit of opportunity for Brandon Williamson. It's just there's a lot of options like this on the slate. So how carried away do we get getting to shares of Brandon Williamson? He's a pitcher with a 21.3% strikeout rate, a 4.18 ERA, and a 4.60 xFIP, and he's given up a fair amount of premium contact this year. So I think odds are probably more that he plays into the Giants and like the Wilmer Flores odd home run that ruins his start at best. But minor dart throw. I think he's available for that purpose. Oh, why did these not come through? There it is. Last start against the Diamondbacks. Went 6, struck out 6, but allowed 6 hits, walked 1 in 6 shutout innings against the Diamondbacks, which is kind of impressive. That's a low strikeout team, pretty good hard-hitting squad. So that was a decent start. That's the one that was maybe lingering in people's memory of, we went against Brandon Williamson and he's kind of succeeded against us. I would call that probably the ceiling. But for the money, 65-73, if he gives us 6 clean, handful of strikeouts, not bad. Giants bats, if you want to go to them, Austin Slater is okay in the leadoff role, 3,100, 2,200. He's obviously affordable. Just kind of a lefty against lefty, a righty against lefties platoon play, strong side of platoons. Tyler Estrada, good player, 4,400, 3,300, a little bit of pop, decent amount of speed, pretty good hit tool, gets on base at a relatively effective clip, a 105 WRC plus. Wilmer Flores, your top priority Giants bat, first base, third base for 4,000 on DK, first, second, and third for 3,000 on FanDuel, 19 homers, 242 ISO, creating runs 43% better than average in a very strong 353 plate appearances, and made his career off of hitting lefties very hard. JD Davis, really bad second half of the season, down to 249, 325, 407, a 103 WRC plus, only a 159 ISO, only 15 home runs, most of which came against righties, most of which came several months ago. Limited. Patrick Bailey, limited. Paul DeYoung, limited. Elio Ramos, Casey Schmidt, Luis Matos, kind of a weak bottom end here. It's really, priority bats are like up here depending on what the final form is. Not a great Giants lineup here. Not that leads to a ton of love for Williamson. He's just more price driven, but there's a little bit of potential. Going back to the Reds real quick. Friedel back to the leadoff spot. Kind of interesting. 11 homers, 24 steals, a 103 WRC plus, an okay on base percentage. Steer, having a good season, 18 homers, 11 steals, 15% better than average creating runs. Ellie has the opportunity to either deliver a long ball, a amazing inside the park home run. God knows what he's going to do on any given slate. He's ludicrously talented, but he's also sitting at only a 90 WRC plus and a 34.7% strikeout rate for 6,300 on a slate where every single one of those dollars is pretty crucial to rostering hitters in better situations. So I don't necessarily love what Ellie does to my salary opportunity when I'm rostering this Reds team. But if I'm going to the Reds and I'm not rostering Ellie, I don't know what I'm doing. So it just further limits the Reds stack here. Nick Martini, 31-23, and you can average down the Ellie salary, but it still counts. It still counts against the salary cap. Tyler Stevenson, 33-24 in the heart of the lineup, 10 home runs, cheap catcher, maybe. Christian Encarnacion Strand, a player I actually do like, 3,500, 2,700, very cheap for his power potential, was destroying AAA before they called him up. Slow to find his footing at the major league level, but does have 4 home runs, a 48.3% hard hit rate so far. Will Benson, if he is in the lineup, this is the confirmed version. 8 homers, 14 steals, a 127 WRC plus, a 216 ISO, and 252 plate appearances. I like him. I have to take him for the high price because you can't build a lineup with this team without him. And then these two guys. It's probably those 5 for DK stacks, but it's really limited doses. Nick Senzel, mix and match option for 36-25 with multi-position eligibility, 10 home runs, 5 steals. Was never the player he was supposed to be. He's cheap, I'll give him that. Limited shares of Reds. Alex Cobb, way up top. Limited shares of Reds. Very limited shares of Brandon Williamson, just as like a value dart if you want it. Competitively priced with the Ragginses of the world with, honestly, a fairly similar opportunity. Raggins was only projected at like 28. Lower end strikeout guy. Raggins has a better strikeout opportunity. But if we think Raggins is going to succeed that many times, then there's enough justification that Brandon Williamson could too. Very limited dart throw though. Giants bats like way down. Last game on deck, 5:49. We're gonna pay that 6 o'clock over anyway. Ridiculous. Hit the like button if you haven't already. Hit the subscribe if you're not already subscribed. Helps you find out. Hop into the Discord. Let's pump up the Discord a little bit. Coming up on football season, we got to get those things going in there and start talking a little bit of pigskin. Seemed like we had some enthusiastic football chat going on earlier in the YouTube chat here. So hopefully people will jump into the Discord. Discord's free. The entire site is free right now. See what happens for football season. Chuck, Larry, Greg, all talking different options in the chat. Ooh, the Angels placed Giolito on waivers. Interesting. Yeah, might be trying to make some waiver-based trade. Do they still have the waiver-based trade system? They do, right? Or did they get rid of that? I forget. Larry's going to set me off here. Uh-oh. What else is going on? That Reds lineup is much better than it was yesterday, says Chuck. Agree. I do agree, but there's still tons and tons of strikeouts in it. And I just like Cobb, and I like his ability to take the bats out of their hands a little bit. Larry says, did I set up the football channel yet in Discord? Not yet, buddy. I meant to last night, and I got a little sidetracked, and then I went to the movies. Finally got out to the new Mission Impossible flick last night. A lot of fun. If you're into the Mission Impossible series, if you just like big popcorn tentpole action movies with just wall-to-wall endless stunts and everything, just phenomenal. As all those movies are in that series. And Tom Cruise just continues to amaze as a 60-something-year-old man flinging himself off of cliffs for our entertainment. I went from being like, Tom Cruise, who cares, such a weirdo, Scientology and all of that stuff, not to bring religion in, or if you want to call that religion into it, but apologies to any Scientologists who might be fans of rotoscouts. I don't mean this, and I don't represent rotoscouts.com, even though I do. I went from being like, wow, he's such a weirdo, to just like, man, that guy's like our biggest movie star, our biggest stuntman. He's simultaneously the biggest movie star and the best stuntman on the planet. It's kind of ridiculous. But can't wait to see what he does to top this one, because it was a lot of fun. Definitely recommend it. I'm going to try and get out on Thursday. I've been holding out for Oppenheimer. I insist on seeing it in 70mm IMAX, the way that Christopher Nolan said you have to see it. And there's only one of those theaters in the entire Northeast. It's in New York City, fortunately, but it's been sold out still every single day, every single show. I'm going to try and get there on Thursday. How's that for derailing the last game with 9 minutes to go before 6 o'clock, Larry? How'd that go? Yesterday was matinee day or something, right? I think that's Tuesday, actually, around here. Yeah, Lincoln Center's the one with that 50mm IMAX, or 70mm IMAX, rather. There's like 30 of them in the entire country. And I mean, it's, I'm sure, negligible difference to regular IMAX, to those premium large format screens, et cetera, but it's just, when Nolan says do this, that's how I want you to see my movie, I hold him in high enough regard, and I like his movie so much that I kind of need to go see it. Frederick, dude is good. Oh, yeah. To be perfectly clear, I always thought Tom Cruise was a very good actor. Like, his performances have always been very good. All those movies you name are excellent. Born on the 4th of July, Eyes Wide Shut, Magnolia. Has always worked with tremendous directors. Has had an amazing career. Very, very good. It's just I went from, like, kind of not liking him, tolerating him almost, to, like, kind of an unapologetic fan at this point. I just like the guy. That's a great theater. It's huge. All right, cool. Looking forward to it. Yeah, and that theater, Larry, the one with all those seats in it that I've looked at every day on Fandango, has been sold out since that movie came out in like mid-July at this point. Just every single show, 5 shows a day, including, for a 3-hour flick, the 10:30 p.m. show. Granted, it's Manhattan, so it's that makes sense. But like, I figured eventually those would taper off. It's just so easy to get to. It's so difficult to get to. Whee! Mama says Tom Cruise made me obsessed with Scientology because I looked at him and Jackie Chan like people who were cloned. Power's been following Tom since Risky Business. Yeah, right there with you. Is there any path that the Brewers can make a good stack even with Wrigley wins? Feel like the wind impact is too overstated and will reduce ownership to nothing. Nick, thank you for bringing that up. I did forget to mention that when we talked about that Cubbies-Brewers game in Wrigley. There's a 10 to 15 mile an hour wind blowing in toward the plate, which, as we know at Wrigley, does have a pretty strong impact. This is one of the ballparks in the league where wind does make a pretty distinct difference in a lot of games. I don't think that takes those teams off the table, though, Nick, to answer your question. I do think that there's a path to success for the Brewers. They don't necessarily have to hit home runs to succeed, and Justin Steele doesn't give up home runs anyway. So if we were going to roster Brewers just to try and get to some of these cheap value prices on a few good players, I don't think the win makes any real difference, given that Steele is very, very effective at keeping home runs in the yard anyway. So that wouldn't be my deciding factor there. It would be more quality against quality and how the prices fit. But like Christian Yelich, 52.37 is a little bit high, but not for his talent level. He's arguably cheap on DK, and he's by far their highest priced guy. I like William Contreras as a catcher option. And then Kana is a reasonably effective $2,800, $2,300 three hitter, 8 home runs and 393 plate appearances. He's a veteran guy who can at least put bat on ball and does not strike out that much. So these are 3 capable bats. This is a power hitter who does need home runs to succeed, so maybe you're skipping Willy Adames there a little bit. He drives the ball, somewhat effectively, a 182 ISO, but really, when you roster Willy Adames, you're looking for the home run upside. Monasterio is kind of, mixed quality. It's down here that this starts to fall apart a little bit, given that these guys aren't great at turning the lineup over. A lot of low on base percentages, a lot of low averages. But if you're hunting for some counting stats, maybe you get there with some stolen base upside. Get me Joey Weimer to first base 3 times, grab me 2 or 3 stolen bases and a couple of runs, and we're paid for. At worst, you're paid for with moderate performances. So given that we need a lot of money for other things on this slate, and given how cheap these guys are, I do think they have value for those purposes. So it's not entirely because of the wind, but I prefer the pitching on both sides in this one. Fair enough, Nick. Hopefully that works out. Poe Degen, he was good in the movie Collateral. Absolutely. Terrific movie. Like that movie quite a bit. Underrated movie, in my opinion. Show me the money. Jerry Maguire. A lot of Tom Cruise movie shout-outs going on. Trey says he hates Hollywood. I love Hollywood. I love movies. I hate the silliness of Hollywood. I do. Speaking of the new Mission Impossible, though, I got a kick out of it's a non-spoiler because it's the setup of the movie in the first 15 seconds of the movie. But in a world in which the real Hollywood is in a big battle with the idea of AI and the concept of AI. Tom Cruise, the savior of Hollywood last year and everything, and Mr. I Save Hollywood as my job, has it so that AI is both the MacGuffin and the big bad in the new flick, which is fucking hilarious. He was great in Jack Reacher in The Last Samurai too. The thing that got me about Reacher was knowing that character is supposed to be like 6'5", and Tom Cruise is like 5'2". But yeah, he was good in that role. He's good in all his action flicks. The Last Samurai, yeah, not bad. I remember liking that movie. Haven't seen it in quite a while. Yeah, I don't think that falls into like the cultural appropriation bucket or anything like that, because he was telling the story of like a guy who went over and did that. So yeah, I think we're okay with that one. What about Day After Tomorrow / Live Die Repeat, which would have been the better title. I think they thought of that too late because it was on all the boxes bigger than the title Live Die Repeat. And somebody just came up with it as a marketing slogan probably after they had named the movie and done all the promotion for it. And they were like, shit, that's a better name. So they slapped that on the box. That's a really good movie too. It's basically like a sci-fi action movie version of Groundhog Day. Good stuff. All right, last game on deck. Clayton Kershaw, Merrill Kelly. My hope is that Clayton Kershaw goes a little under-owned for his ridiculous talents. 10-2, 11-1. He's obviously expensive. He's one of the most expensive pitchers on the slate. Goes up near the top of the board projection-wise alongside the Pablo Lopez's of the world and the other high-end pitchers that we talked about. If they're under-owned, I expect he's going to be under-owned. You do have the potential for limited innings. He only went 5 in each of his 2 starts returning from injury. And then in the last start, where I was expecting him to go a little longer, had that rain intervention, so only went 2 in that game. Does that have a limiting impact now that he's only pitched 2 innings in the last 10, 12 days, whatever it's been? I'm not entirely sure. I don't really know. I think we're getting 5 no matter what. I'm not saying we're getting a limited 75 pitch count or anything like that. I think we're getting 5, probably upside through 6. What I'm saying, though, is I think we're probably capped at 6. I don't know that we're getting 7, 8, complete game type of performance out of Clayton Kershaw here. So a little bit limited there, but I do like the option quite a bit. Even against the low strikeout, hard-hitting Diamondbacks, it's Clay Kershaw. I'm happy to go to it. Andrew ordered the code red. Uh-oh. Can't handle the truth. That's another fantastic movie. Feel good, man. I mean, just the list of movies we named in the chat proves how good an actor and a movie star Tom Cruise is. There's some phenomenal movies listed in there. But that's definitely one of them. That is high up on the list. Aaron Sorkin script. Jack Nicholson, dominant massive, awesome performance. Great movie. Rewatchables did A Few Good Men last month. Great episode. Yeah, that was an okay episode. I have my issues with the rewatchables, being such a big movie fan. A lot of things they say are a little bit silly. What was the one that I hated that they did recently? My Cousin Vinny. They did the My Cousin Vinny one, and like all three of them didn't really seem to like the movie all that much. They didn't seem to find it funny. They clearly missed some of the jokes. Like in one of the things, you know, the scene where Mona Lisa Vito comes in and she's saying, you know, the sink was dripping and I tightened it and I measured it with the blah, blah, blah. On that podcast, they were like, well, why is she in there fixing the sink? Like they didn't get that she was joking, that was their like marital banter. It was also setting up her expertise for later in the movie. It's just like so dumb sometimes. I also hate that they, every single show, have to go into the, well, comic book movies are ruining Hollywood and blah, blah, blah. If you don't like it, stop watching movies. I don't know what to tell you. It drives me nuts. So, yeah, I want to make a podcast about people who actually like movies. But I do listen to every episode of that show. And by and large, they are pretty good. I like that. I like the rewatchables. But I have my issues with some of those guys. And what's his name needs to stop doing that goddamn impression every episode. It was funny the first time. It is not funny anymore. That, the hell's the character's name? The character from that Baltimore show. You guys know that. Anybody who listens to rewatchables knows who I'm talking about. That impression drives me bananas that he does the exact same joke every single show for the last like 100 shows. It's too much. End it. Merrill Kelly on the other side, pitcher for the Diamondbacks, 9,100, 10-9, limited by facing the Dodgers, 20-point FanDuel projection. There's a ceiling here. But he's got to have a really good start against the Dodgers on a deep slate with a lot of similarly priced options who project out better. Kelly's having a really good season, 2.97 ERA, a 3.70 xFIP, 26.6% strikeouts, limiting home runs fairly effectively, 3.10% home run rate, 8.3% barrels, a little bit of hard hits, a little bit of exit velo, facing the Dodgers. I don't love it. I think he just falls by the wayside. Talented guy. I wouldn't be totally shocked if he went out and had a very good game. But for 10-9 on the FanDuel slate, especially when I want to go to Pablo and all those guys, it just kind of falls off for me. 91, he's a little bit more playable on the DK board. If you're going to Diamondbacks bats, Ketel Marte, Tommy Pham, Christian Walker, Buddy Kennedy sneaky in this second spot. Corbin Carroll dropping all the way to 7th against the lefty because he sucks lefty-lefty. Sucks is a strong word, but he suffers lefty-lefty. Still good for counting stats. Still playable from down here, but very high priced, hitting 7th, loses a little bit of luster for Corbin Carroll. These are your priority bats. Buddy Kennedy's got an interesting skill set for 2,200, 2,100, has done nothing at the major league level yet. Tommy Pham, power and speed. Christian Walker, power, doesn't strike out. Lourdes Gurriel, power, limited in the triple slash this year, but also doesn't really strike out that much. Evan Longoria strikes out enough for everybody, 31.6%, but he's got 11 homers in 190 plate appearances and a 247 ISO with a very, very strong contact profile. I like the opportunity for Evan Longoria to hit one last home run off of his old pal Clayton Kershaw. I don't know how many he has. You guys know I don't care about BVP. I'm just being facetious. Nick Ahmed, Gabriel Moreno. Round out the lineup with playable parts. Gabriel Moreno, 26. Very, very cheap for a young catcher. 2,100 on the FanDuel slate. Young kid against Clayton Kershaw. Not ideal, but 286, 328, 414, 6 homers, 4 steals. Exactly at league average for run creation. I think you could do worse if you're going to Diamondback stacks for your catcher position. On the Dodgers side, the plays are kind of obvious if this is the lineup. Mookie, Freddie, Will, Max. All 4 of those guys are dynamite. All 4 of those guys have pretty good shots at home run upside. Mookie's got triple position eligibility on the FanDuel slate for 4,400. They're superstars, these 2 guys. These 2 guys are stars. These 3 guys are very playable lefties in the outfield for very cheap prices that help you average down the prices of the stars above them in the lineup. They're all pretty stout home run hitters. They all put the ball in play fairly effectively. That's David Peralta, Jason Hayward, James Outman. Enrique Hernandez, Michael Busch at the bottom of the lineup. Kind of more mix and match parts, but playable if you're going to a ton of Dodger stacks. Priority Dodgers are 1 through 7. Let's go back to the pitching board. Let's take a look at the home run board, and then let's punch out of here. I've been doing a lot of talking over the last 2 days. Matty Olson, top of the board, 22 in the home run model. Pete Alonso, was the overall home run pick of the day, just because I didn't want to go to the Braves. Everybody else on the Braves slots in after that. Francisco Alvarez. Luis Robert is the oddball from the White Sox, sneaking in here, non-Met, non-Brave power bat. The Mets, as we talked about when we talked about that game, and we'll talk about again in a second when we look at the pitching board, are drawing premium power marks for the 4 top hitters because of Teeny on the other side. But there's definitely a very big downside for the Mets tonight too. So I don't want to get carried away just because they have good home run marks. Corey Seager, excellent option. Rafi Devers, excellent option from that Boston-Houston game. Some of the other Boston guys got to be around here. Adam Duvall down here. Surprised none of the Houston guys are up there, but Brian Bayo does limit home run potential a little bit. There's Alvarez. It's a pretty good board. Kind of limited in the guys that are above the magic number, especially considering most of them are some of the most popular plays on the slate, and like 7 of them come from that Coors Field game. Top of the board, Pablo Lopez, apparently not going to be that popular. George Kirby, whether he's popular or not, I love that spot against the Athletics for a little bit less, a lot less on the DK slate. This is a phenomenal piece of value on DK. This is a very strong piece of value, I think, on both sites. I like the opportunity for Alex Cobb to succeed as a very good way to get to a lot of those bats. He'll be popular because of that. So maybe that leads me to some Gavin Williams, who I like quite a bit against that Twins team. A lot of strikeouts on the board for him there. Clay Kershaw, just as highly priced as these guys, doesn't project out quite as high, but obviously a very similar ceiling. Jose Berrios, a little bit expensive, very expensive on the FanDuel slate, affordable enough on DK. Andrew Heaney, I expect Heaney's on that value board, along with like the Cole Ragginses, the Zach Thompsonses, the Brandon Williamsons, the Jose Quintanas, Dean Kramers and Mackenzie Gores, and probably not going to get as much ownership. I think Heaney has an equal or better ceiling than any of the other pitchers priced at 8,000 or below, 9,000 or below. Heaney's got just as good a ceiling as Gav Williams, just as good a ceiling as Jose Berrios. He's got a canyon, a chasm of a downside below him, a bigger downside. I think the way I wrote it in the article was that the floor, where the floor should be, it's just thin, cracked ice. That's how ugly it could get with Heaney. But on the right day, he's a slate winner at those prices. Justin Steele, 10-6, 9-5, perfectly playable against that Milwaukee team. Wind blowing in Chicago, like we talked about. As good as he is, and like I said, that's not the deciding factor there because he's already good at limiting home runs. But there is a decent possibility that helps him out a little bit. Corbin Burns, one of the higher ceilings on the slate, also pitching in that limiting environment, should help him out with the home run issues that have cropped up from time to time. Maybe gives him a little bit of an uptick and a little bit of a boost toward that ceiling. One of the highest overall ceilings on the entire slate from the middle of the board there. Big Bino, yo, what about Gavin? I talked about Gavin. I love Gavin. One of my favorite options on the slate. 8,300, 8,600. Monster strikeout upside going up against the Twins lineup with like 28% strikeouts. We also did like a whole 10-minute segment on that game. Like Gavin quite a bit, Big Bino. One of my favorite options, had I built my placeholder lineup in time, I would have used him as my placeholder pitcher. Raggins definitely in play, 66, 6,000. But like I said, I'm going to hedge that, and I'm going to take a little bit of a contrarian position. Very minor shares, but a little bit of a contrarian position with some of those Pirates bats. Charlie Morton, like clinging to the edge of the slate with his fingernails. It's just because it's Coors Field. Otherwise, he'd be very involved here at these prices. 98.85, a little bit too expensive to go to him at Coors Field. A little bit of lingering doubt. I prefer Dean Kramer. Probably prefer Mackenzie Gore in a tough matchup against the Blue Jays. Bad as he's been, as much power as he's given up, there is a little bit of potential for him to deliver around this kind of a level. Then you get into some of the bargain bin. Jose Quintana, moderately playable for 77.63. Zach Thompson, playable for 59, 56. We just saw him succeed a couple of times to decent returns for those kind of prices. Tough matchup against the top end of the Padres, but gains ground against the bottom end. Brandon Williamson against the flawed Giants lineup. There's a little bit on the bone there. Seth Lugo, I just think is overpriced for FanDuel for where he projects. 7,900 on DK. I think he's a lot more playable over there, but kind of a limited option. I don't love him, given that he projects lower than a lot of these guys. Not really a big fan of the Seth Lugo play. Ken Waldichuk, not really on the board, 65.58. If you wanted to say there's strikeout potential, sure, but he's been so bad, and the Mariners are surging so well, and I just want to go to those Mariners bats, so I'm not into this one. Merrill Kelly, surprisingly low, 10.991, just obviously doesn't jibe with this position on the board. Everybody below Merrill Kelly, Brian Bayo is probably playable against Houston, but I expect a lot out of the Houston bats. Same thing with JP France against Boston, and the prices are just wrong for where they project. So these guys just look unplayable to me. And then Schultens, Ortiz, and Peter Lambert are wildly unplayable. Peter Lambert might be the most unplayable pitcher of the entire season in this spot against the Atlanta Braves. Guys, with that, I'm going to punch out. Cutoff, Lar, cutoff. I'll call it Williamson. Lugo, I'll call it Lugo just for the DK side of things because he is cheap enough over there. Everybody down here is basically unplayable in my mind. Firm middle, but kind of shaky ground for a lot of these guys. There's upside for a lot of those guys, but there's also, kind of a shaky floor, an unsturdy foundation. More foundation at the top. More reliable options at the top. All right. Lineups are basically in. Coming up on 6:10. We didn't gain any ground over yesterday's show at all by starting 15 minutes earlier, but that's okay. I'm going to punch out and build some lineups. We had enough time yesterday. Hopefully you have enough time today. Trey says, Williamson, let's go. Get on the board. I like it. Yeah, hey, it's not the craziest play in the world, man. 65. Give it this guy, to a lesser degree, this guy. Like, they all compare enough with Cole Ragans. I know Ragans has been really good, but there are warts in the stats that we read over those last few games when he's been really good and gotten everybody's attention. The weight of the world's going to be on him today. I don't know. Not talking you out of it. He projects well. Like, I don't want to end the show by accidentally talking people out of their Cole Ragans spot because he's probably going to succeed. With that, guys, thank you so much. Hit the like button. You guys rock. I love that you come here and hang out every day. We're building an audience. We get more people every single day. It's fantastic. Makes me feel good. One of these days, maybe it'll help pay the bills. Who knows? But with that, good luck out there. Somebody go win something tonight. I'll see you tomorrow.